order at 5:31 p.m. Welcome to the May 14th, 2025 Eugene Budget Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us in this in-person meeting. It is a privilege to be here, and I'm very thankful for all of you, members of the committee, members of the public who have joined us, for putting your time towards being here and participating in this process. I ask particularly that all of our committee members remember that that privilege of being here is not something that everyone in our community necessarily shares. And in many cases, the decisions that we make at this table will have the greatest impact on those members of our community least able to participate in this process. So please always just use that as a guiding light for the work we do here. Anyone wishing to access this meeting remotely can do so by watching the live stream on our Budget Committee webcast's website or by tuning into the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21. Tonight's meeting will include a public comment period. Public comment will be received in person only tonight and during the May 21st Budget Committee meeting. Hybrid testimony will be received in 2 weeks during the May 28th public hearing. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please fill out a request to speak form on our Budget Committee webcast's webpage or in person at the entrance to the chambers. We will be accepting those forms until 5:35 p.m. That's 2 more minutes. These forms will be used to generate the random order of speakers and correctly enter speakers' names into the public record. The public comment period will be limited to 90 minutes. If the number of speakers exceeds the time we have allotted, we encourage speakers to consider abbreviating their remarks so the maximum number of speakers can be heard. For those joining the meeting remotely, for the public comment period, you are welcome to email your comments to the Budget Committee at eugenebudgetmailbox@ci.eugene.or.us. As a reminder, meeting rules of conduct apply to all attendees, both in chambers and in the lobby, and include no flags, signs, loud or disruptive language, noise, or conduct that obstructs the business of the Budget Committee. Please keep the room quiet and respectful for all speakers. You are welcome to wave your hands in silent support. Additionally, we encourage those that are ill or who have had close contact with others that are ill to join our meetings remotely rather than in person. We have masks available in the lobby if you need one. In the case of a medical emergency, an automated external defibrillator, AED, is located on the counter behind the staff at the west side of the room. Emergency exits are through the double doors located at the back of the room and the double doors near the front of the room. The doors to the patio can also be used as needed. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Minutes from the April 30th meeting were sent out in the packet on Friday, May 9th. Did everyone have an opportunity to review those? And did anyone have any recommended changes or comments?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilor Clark. Do I have a second?
Second.
From Councilor Evans. All in favor, please raise your hands and keep them raised until someone from our staff counting team tells us okay. Thank you. Any opposed? And did we have any abstentions? All right, the minutes are approved. We now begin public comment on the amended 2025 to 2027 proposed biennial budget. Those wishing to speak during public comment must have registered, either virtually or in the lobby upon arrival this evening. The registration period has now ended. Comments should focus on the proposed budget at this time. The meeting moderator will announce 2 speakers at a time. When your name is called, please move forward to the chair reserved for the next speaker or to the speaker's table when it is your turn. Please leave any bags at your seat. If you have documents to give the committee, please place them in the basket next to the microphone. Moderator, How many speakers do we have this evening? We have 34 speakers signed up for public comment. All speakers should preface your statement with your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward, if known. You will have 2.5 minutes to comment. The timer will begin flashing red when you have 15 seconds remaining. When your time is concluded, the moderator will mute your microphone and move on to the next speaker. Please note that use of profanity is prohibited, and any instances of profanity will result in immediate termination of speaking privileges. Moderator, please announce the first individuals registered for public comment.
We have Cameron.
Good evening. My name is Cameron Stringfield. I'm from Ward 7, and I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Our community's needs are being cut. 4 out of the top 5 years with the most days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit in Eugene were in the last 4 years, with over a month of extreme temperatures each year. The Amazon Pool is a community need. Sheldon Community Center and Eugene Library are places that provide many services, especially for children and youth, including childcare. This is a community need. Green Hill is regularly packed to the brim with animals that would have otherwise been stray, abused, or killed. Green Hill Humane Society is a community need. Cahoots, a godsend for our most vulnerable, getting cut is obviously shameful and dangerous. Cutting animal welfare and public records reporting is also shameful. Meanwhile, EPD will continue to be armed with the most advanced equipment to surveil our community, harass our unhoused, and crack down on mutual aid programs, labor struggles, and protest movements, all of which I have personally witnessed recently. Multi-unit property tax exemptions gave $47.5 million in handouts to ultra-rich corporations like Obie Companies and Atkins Dame by eliminating taxes on their buildings for 10 years. You don't talk about that in the context of this supposed budget shortfall. What could just those handouts to the rich have done to fund these services? Why is it that you cut all the things the working class people of Eugene need, but make sure to pay for all the things that protect and profit the business interests here? It's because you serve the business interests, and you will put their profits over the people of Eugene every time, because that's what this system you serve is built to do. We need a new system. What would a people's budget of Eugene look like? What if the people had the power to make their own budget and spend money on the things that they want and that they need? We will be holding an event to talk about that at the Tykesen and Bascom rooms of the Eugene Library on May 18th at 1:30 p.m. We call on the frustrated people of Eugene to join us that day and to continue to articulate our class interests in these city meetings. And I don't expect that you'll restore funding to the services that you're wanting to cut, but maybe in the interest of democracy, you will.
Elizabeth Steinhaus, followed by Brittany Quick-Warner.
Steinhaus, City of Eugene. I guess I'm here to speak on behalf of people that can't speak for themselves. Gandhi once famously stated, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated." This quote highlights his belief that a society's compassion for the most vulnerable, including animals, is a reflection of its overall character and moral standing. I'm just here to speak about the services that are on the chopping block. Obviously, everybody's here to speak on behalf of that. Getting rid of animal services, alternative response services performed by Cahoots, closing the library 2 days a week, reducing funding for the River House, closing Amazon Pool and Sheldon Community Center. These are all necessary things in our community, and I am outraged that we are considering getting rid of them or reducing the funding for them. Let's talk about Amazon Pool. If you've been there recently, there's a line out the door every single time. Why have we not considered increasing the amount that you pay to get into Amazon's pool so it can fund itself? That doesn't make any sense to me. Our first choice is to just shut it down. We're going to drive by a community pool during the summer when it's 90 degrees and stare through the gate and go, why is this pool closed? That makes no sense. Now, Sheldon Community Center, my children have gone to that community center for summer camps. They've gone to that community center for childcare. And if those of you who don't have children that are of school age or younger, you would not know that there is a great need in this community for childcare. It is incredibly imperative that we continue to keep such a large situation where people, so many children need this service and use this service. Once again, as soon as those programs become available, they're sold out within minutes. That's what a great need we have in this community. And I see my time is being cut short, and I'm sure a lot of people will speak on behalf of the library, Cahoots, and the animal welfare. So I'm going to go ahead and let it go at that.
Good evening, Budget Committee members, councilors. My name is Brittany Quick-Warner. I am from Eugene. I live in Ward 5. Thank you for all your service and for the time and energy you're devoting to this incredibly challenging budget cycle. No one wants to see valuable programs eliminated. This community has been clear about that. We also understand the seriousness of the fiscal landscape and the need to make difficult choices. Our hope is that through collaboration, creativity, and a shared responsibility, we can soften the blow of some of these decisions. We're especially grateful this committee has the opportunity to dig deeply into the numbers and examine the data and the trends and the trade-offs that we know will have real-world outcomes. Over the past several weeks, the Chamber has done some of this deep analysis as well of the city's current amended budget proposals, in addition to reviewing more than a decade of past city budgets. We've also spent time listening to business owners, residents, and many of the voices we've heard in these rooms. That work has led us to believe there is a path forward that could preserve essential services and still deliver some meaningful long-term savings. We believe the city can still preserve funding for the things that folks are really concerned about: the library, the pool, the community center, downtown cleanup and beautification, the animal welfare unit and sheltering contract, alternative services, neighborhood services, homeless services, and some targeted park maintenance. Our analysis shows that with deeper strategic cuts, primarily vacant positions and realignments that the staff have already identified, the city can reduce its general fund spending by approximately $5 million annually without eliminating these core services. We'd like, that would leave a smaller gap, which then could be hopefully closed with some sort of temporary budget stabilization fee. We know that the city is working on this. We're advocating with council to find a balanced alternative approach. One thing we'd love for the Budget Committee to explore is what would it look like for the city to make a contribution to the State of Oregon PERS buy-down program. We know the budget is tight, but we're also mindful of the long-term savings. When the city contributed last time, it did so using reserve funds, and over time those dollars were replenished. We just would love to better understand the trade-offs of using a portion of reserves now in order to find some savings later. We're working with council on this alternative. We hope that it will alleviate some of the most difficult decisions that we know you guys are going to have to make. We hope you'll join us in supporting this path, and at the very least, encouraging a compromise that does protect some of these services that folks are really passionate about. Finally, I want to emphasize that the business community stands ready to be a partner in this work, and we have for a long time. We know a thriving community depends on a healthy, functioning city, and we're here to help play a role in making this work. Thanks.
Followed by Nicole Garcia.
My name is Kelly Clayton of Eugene, and I'm here tonight as a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves, our animals. I urge you to reject the proposed elimination of animal services and the sheltering contract with Green Hill Humane Society. This proposal is not just a budget cut, it is a moral failure in the making, and it's a reversal of over a decade of compassionate, community-centered progress. If this program is cut, Eugene Police will no longer have the ability to impound animals in emergency situations where animals have severely injured someone, bitten someone, are present when their owner is arrested or hospitalized, are causing traffic hazards, or are victims of cruelty and neglect. Without this service, dangerous, suffering, and abandoned animals will be left with nowhere to go and no one to intervene. Imagine, no more capacity to investigate animal cruelty or neglect, no response to animals left in hot cars, no patrols for off-leash dogs that threaten children and pets at our parks, no centralized way for a family to report or recover a lost pet, no shelter for animals who are dumped on our streets. Last year alone, Green Hill sheltered nearly 1,600 animals. Each of those animals represented either a public safety risk or an animal in crisis. Removing this infrastructure leaves our city vulnerable, both ethically and practically. We cannot expect police, emergency responders, or citizens to handle these situations on their own. That is unrealistic and unfair. Make no mistake, this cut will not save money in the long term. It will cost us more in emergency responses, in legal liability, and in the erosion of public trust. More importantly, it will cost lives. To defund this program is to turn our backs on the vulnerable. It is to dismantle a safety net that protects us all. And it is to forget that how we treat animals reflects who we are as a society. I urge you to preserve funding for Eugene's animal services and the Green Hill contract. Protect public safety, uphold compassion, and keep Eugene a community that we can be proud of. Thank you for listening.
Nicole Garcia, followed by Carrie Lieberman.
Hi, yeah, my name's Nicole, and I'm in Ward 8, Churchill. I'm a senior foster at Wiggly Tails, and I've also done rescue for 25 plus years across 3 states. So I have a lot of experience in that area. I reviewed the proposals as they were outlined regarding the sheltering contract and the animal control services. And I wanted to say, first of all, that I'm not sure how we're actually cutting these, because according to ORS 609, the section 609, that they require the local municipalities to have these sheltering services that were usually paid for, or it says that they're supposed to be paid for by licensing and impounding and or the general fund. And in lieu of that, they need to contract that out, and that is in our current Oregon state laws. And there's no clause in there for, skipping these or if they can afford them or something like that. It's in there. There are also, the ORS section 609 covers specific duties of the animal control officer, including impounding animals in case of neglect, hoarding, violence, and so on. And without the animal control officer, we have no way of doing that. There's no laws that outline how those things are supposed to happen without the animal control. So without the legal coverage, the animals would suffer for it, as it was just covered before me. The shelter also has no contractual obligation to accept any animals from the city of Eugene, from any officer, any official, any general public whatsoever. I know that they're currently working on legislation to try to fix these things at the state level, but we don't have that right now. And so without that, we have to resort to property laws, which means that all the strays would have to be held by a finder or rescue or someone else for 90 days, and our rescues cannot absorb that right now. We are already struggling with the amount of owner surrender requests we get in a week, and we have to turn away a lot of people, and we just cannot absorb that. We work with areas, I've worked with areas in different parts of the country where these services are falling apart, and it's not a good outcome. And so I don't want to see that for the city of Eugene. And I also want to see that we stay above the law, because we would be skirting that law if we cut these services. Thank you.
Followed by Laurel Lisowskis.
Hi, I'm Carrie Lieberman. I'm the Executive Director of Green Hill Humane Society. I've lived in Eugene for over 30 years in Ward 2. Everyone is here talking about animals, so I'm going to go off my script a little. 70% of families in this country, and clearly in Eugene, own pets, which is why you're hearing a lot about animals. It is a core function of a community to have animal services. Really, there's nowhere in the country that doesn't see it as a core function. And Green Hill has been a contract partner with the City of Eugene since 2012. And through the public-private partnership, we've combined public funding with donations and volunteers to build a program that protects both animals and public safety. That's why the city entered into the contract in the first place, to save money while improving services. And while there's always more to do, we've largely achieved those goals. Eugene's overall budget for animal services, including the officers and the sheltering contract, is nearly unchanged from what it was in 2010, when the city was paying Lane County $936,000 annually. Look at what is being considered to be cut, it's roughly the same. Since then, the costs, of course, have risen dramatically, but there's been no increase to our contract since 2020. Green Hill has stepped up, we've absorbed inflationary costs, and with nearly 1,600 Eugene animals coming through our doors last year, we responded to a 32% increase from prior to COVID numbers. But today, the city's contract covers less than half of the actual costs of these services. We've stretched every dollar. We've relied on donors, volunteers, and sheer determination. But we're very close to the breaking point. There's no room to cut. The sheltering contract, we don't think there's any room to cut. The animal services contract for the employees that are doing the animal services work either. So if Eugene doesn't fund this service in the face of rising need and real inflation, it does put the entire program at risk of collapse. And while Green Hill will continue to do everything we can, we simply cannot do the city's work without the city's support. We need your leadership to protect what's been built over the past. Thank you.
Laurel Lasofskis, followed by Reed Hachikawa.
Hello, Budget Committee members. I'm Laurel Lasofskis, and I'm a member of Ward 2. Matt Keating is my guy. Hi, here we are together, yes. I'm also a social worker and a Cahutian working in Eugene for the last decade. I have met some of you, admired others from afar, and respect the work you have all done thus far immensely. So when I meet with folks in the community about cahoots, I bring a data scientist who studies cahoots with me because he brings the literal receipts in indisputable ways back to the team's passion, to back the team's passion and grit. And folks always say to me every time, even fellow data nerds are like, nice to meet you, but you don't need to convince me of cahoots' worth. But we do. We do need to convince you and our collective selves because we're seriously at risk of losing something that will be almost impossible to bring back. Over 100 years of collective expertise and instinct, thousands and thousands of calls in our care lenses, a Cahoots Academy filled with experts in the field, and a working knowledge of our resources in real time from knowing our city's supports and offerings. Since April 7th, there have been approximately 1,710 missed opportunities to connect with our city in vulnerable moments. A significant amount of those calls will have been responded to by officers instead last month, whether that's identifying someone in the ICU, delivering a death notification, or helping steer an elderly lady with Alzheimer's back to her home to make sure she gets settled. Some of these calls will not be attended to at all, like helping a survivor of domestic abuse find shelter for the night after officer contact, tending to some self-harm wounds with a sad, intoxicated community member, or helping an unhoused individual manage a recent toe amputation. There is a group of Cahoots workers who've been working really hard both to educate ourselves on all things not related to direct service and clinical expertise, and also to try and educate you all and other stakeholders about what we actually do. We left some information here for you, which we've been sharing elsewhere as well, but the TLDR is that the Cahoots integrated healthcare model has immense public value and is a valid arm of public safety, and we encourage everyone to try and understand the landscape. Our little group with combined expertise has been busy on our end, making it possible to come back to work, incorporating ourselves as a nonprofit, securing temporary fiscal sponsorship, writing grants, working on cost recovery methods. We want you to know that we are readying ourselves, becoming more prepared by the day, open to feedback, and standing strong in the knowledge of our worth.
Good evening, my name is Reed Kajikawa. I am here in my personal capacity. I am the training director at the Public Defender Services of Lane County, which provides representation for people charged in state courts, not in the Eugene Municipal Court. And I'm a resident of the city of Eugene, and I'm a resident of Ward 1 in the city of Eugene. I'm asking that the court, we've heard about animals, we've heard about cahoots. I'm asking that this body reconsider proposed cuts to its budget for immediate crisis intervention services, such as cahoots and whitebird. And I want to let you know that the decisions that you make in this body have ripple effects, not just in the city and not just in the municipal courts, but in the circuit courts as well. I wanted to give you some numbers because we have seen a significant increase in the types of cases in the circuit court. For the Class C misdemeanor, criminal trespass in the second degree with a maximum sentence of 30 days in jail, in 2024, our office opened 153 cases. 67 of those cases were standalone cases. In 2025, this year, from January 1st until May 13th, we have opened 102 cases, 51 as standalone cases. A considerable increase in trespass in the second degree, entering or remaining unlawfully on premises, sleeping on the street, sleeping in a parking lot, being asked to leave. For contrast, from January 1st to May 13th in 2024, there were only 47 cases, 16 of which were standalone, so more than 3 times more this year than last over the same period of time. For disorderly conduct in the second degree, a Class B misdemeanor, 126 last year total, 78 which were standalone. From the time period in 2024, January 1st to May 13th, 64, 50 of which were standalone, compared to 50 this year, 25 of which are standalone cases. And 36 of those cases, 36 of the disorderly conduct cases last year were all the result of one incident, which was a protest case. You're affecting people who are mentally ill, people who are unhoused. You cannot incarcerate your way out of a public health crisis.
Is Rob Bissett, followed by Misty Bowman.
Hi, my name is Rob Facette. I live in Ward 2. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, former Southeast Neighbors board member. I wanted to talk about the amended proposed budget submitted 2 weeks ago has people rightly angry. Whenever the developer and business owner class want something in this city, they get it, as evidenced by their speaker who was up here talking about all the things that they're doing behind the scenes with the city council all the time. The Riverfront Vanity Project, to build so-called market rate housing, you need $150,000 to afford, including land giveaways, tax giveaways, and at least $35 million for streets and utilities to benefit those MUPTI-approved luxury waterfront properties. Even assuming the current budget levels without the additional funds lost by these corporate giveaways, which Councilor Zelenka has consistently and rightly identified as such, the proposed amended budget is not a good faith effort to address the budget issue in a meaningful way. When I say good faith effort, I mean an effort to prioritize and expand services for the regular working people of Eugene in a way that would reasonably expect most people would support, instead of threatening to gut the services that matter most to working people at the expense of the things that matter to the wealthiest business owners, the developers, the vanity projects of elected officials. The budget cut scenario proposed prioritizes maintaining quote-unquote core functions and public safety, which as always are narrowly defined to serve the interests of the few and the property owners. Maintaining and expanding open hours for the library is a public safety issue. Maintaining community centers is a public safety issue. Funding and expanding cahoots sustainably over the last decade would have been a public safety issue. So I understand that much of the politics implicit in this budget proposal that's been made is to make a threat in the context of the ongoing dispute between city government and the Chamber of Commerce over the fire service fee. And again, we've seen them show up here to kind of deflect some of the responsibility, their responsibility and the role they play in that. Respectfully, that kind of politics of threats against the people is not the kind of politics we need in this moment. We need a politics that meets the scale of the need in our city, using public money, our money, to fund positive programs that support our working people. So I encourage this committee, especially the citizen members who don't share the same responsibility in creating the crisis, to maintain a strong line against every cut to the library, recreation services, and cultural services in this proposal. Thank you.
Bowman, followed by Stefan Streck.
Good evening. My name is Misty Bowman. I live in Ward 7. Whether the city council uses bridges, reserves, sunset taxes, or stays the course on this budget does not interest me nearly as much as how the budget is allocated. The city must fund the library, Cahoots, the Amazon pool, public spaces, social programs, and do this by defunding the police. Councilor Ye, on Monday you said the police are but one part of community safety. After-school programs and literacy are equally important. I empathize with why you said that. The city and this council clearly gives time and energy and careful budgeting to other safety and security aspects of the city, nor do I wish to dismiss the hard work of everyone involved. However, I walk down the streets of Eugene and it is not Cahoots that has cameras everywhere. It is not CORE that is allowed to bring firearms to every incident as a given. The Green Hill Humane Society won't potentially cooperate with ICE and kidnap legal citizens, sending them to concentration camps. The Amazon pool lifeguards do not harass me and my homeless neighbors when I volunteer at Food Not Bombs. Our librarians do not have access to militarized vehicles and drones. And thank goodness, because I think one of my books is overdue. While it may be true that the police are one part of community safety from council's perspective, in my daily life, they hold the majority of the power. And with this budget, they are about to gain a lot more power. As a Christian, I am called to identify with the powerless, the poor, and those in prison, and treat the foreigner in my land as a native born. To quote Martin Luther King Jr., the question before all of us tonight is not, if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to my job? The question before us tonight is not, if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week? The question is not, if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question before all of us tonight is, if I do not stop to help this man in need, what will happen to him? That's the question. Thank you for your time.
Stefan Streck, followed by Micaiah Gums.
Righteous word. Thank you, City Council and members of the Budget Committee that have come out tonight. It really hits home that so many people are speaking about the necessity of maintaining funding for Green Hill, and that really stands out. My cat passed away just last year, but he would have been a cat that would have gone to Green Hill once upon a time. He was a really great guy that left this cat behind. He grew up in this city and there wasn't enough services for him, so he died of unfortunate causes. And nobody wanted this cat. I couldn't let him go to Green Hill. It was a black cat. But he meant a lot to a lot of people. Anyways, the funding is there, seeing as how we have a budget of about $1 billion and moving around just 10 or 15 million out of $1 billion isn't that much to ask for. If you want an out, please, you can hire me. I know you need a new city manager. I'll do the job for half the price. I can probably get everything done within 6 months and then move on to bigger and better things, which are far more deserving of my time than fixing other people's mistakes. On that regard, I still have a beautiful little cat that I did adopt from Green Hill, and she came from a situation where there were 37 cats abandoned in a 2-bedroom apartment, and Green Hill, working with the Sheriff's Department, responded to them being abandoned with no food or water and rescued them, which was a very great service for our community to have. She lives a great life and always will. But please consider everything people have said and give people more time to speak. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Micaiah Gums, followed by West Koopman.
Hello, everyone. I've never done one of these before, so I might stutter, but I'm going to use my high school theater skills to put good use. I am a Eugene resident. I don't know which ward, West Eugene, Barger area. I'm a mental health worker. I have been for the last 4 years now. I love what I do. I wish I saw more of it in my community. Today I'm here to speak for Cahoots, to say that learning that Cahoots was going to, I don't know, potentially be not funded was terrifying to say the least. I fear for my community members that are in crisis or may experience a crisis in the future. Those who are in crisis need empathetic, trauma-informed listeners. They do not need police officers. Please understand that communities need healthy social support services, and Cahoots is a huge part of that. Yeah, I guess that's what I want to say. Please keep that in consideration, and I don't know, go Ducks.
Our next speaker is West Koopman, followed by Bob Moland.
Good evening. My name is Wes Kaufman, but pretty close. It's okay. I live in the city of Eugene, off River Road. I know we're here to talk about numbers tonight. But I thought when I was preparing to speak to you all, I was thinking about what is the true immeasurable cost of the loss of a service like Cahoots. We'll count them in overdoses, people dying alone whose bodies will be recovered unceremoniously hours or days after the fact. How will we measure the interventions lost behind closed doors where a trusted source is no longer available to intervene in matters of domestic violence? How many people will get sicker without anyone to check on them, take them to the hospital, or take them to a shelter? The scale of suffering is unknowable. And the people most vulnerable to this suffering are not likely to show up here at City Hall to plead their cases to you. It is your job as legislators to consider them, to ask yourselves, how will my most vulnerable constituents be impacted by these decisions? I have listened to far too many city council meetings where the central areas of concern revolve around businesses, property, and policing and ticketing individuals who infringe upon those assets. But you are not legislators of property or capital. You are legislators of people. This includes people who have to sleep on the streets, and they need you. You previously expressed the sentiment that the city did not fire Cahoots, that Cahoots, through its lack of funding, quit. I'm a public school teacher. It's my job to identify students' needs, teach them relevant skills, and employ various tactics that will support their learning. If a student was floundering, asking for help, saying they needed more support in order to accomplish a task, it would be inappropriate, certainly cruel, if I were to shrug and respond, "You have failed." Because Cahoots didn't quit. This is evidenced by the many people in the room right now who are waiting for the opportunity to get back to their jobs, to get back to supporting your constituents. It is evidence in the many people in this room, some testifying, some not, of the essential nature of the services this organization provides. Our city budget can and should reflect the priorities of your community. I urge you all to heed the needs of your community and include Cahoots crisis and medical services in this budget. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bob Moland, followed by Athena Aguiar.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Moland. I'm a citizen of Eugene, Ward 6, and an organizer for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I am a working class person. I work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to earn my daily bread. I've got a car I can't afford to fix, rent, bills, and groceries I can barely afford to pay for, and an economy in shambles. Prices have been increasing for months, and no politicians are coming to save us. I had to lose an hour of work just to attend this meeting, and With times being so tough, every minute that I'm not on the clock earning money is a future sacrifice in some area of my life. Regardless, I still made it here this afternoon because on top of all the difficulties working class people are facing, I am now being threatened. Threatened by the city council to cough up $10 million or I will lose my basic services. This is an insult, a slap in the face to all the people who give up the precious moments of their lives to make this town run. For the city council to hold our essential services hostage is unacceptable. Why should regular people have to foot the bill for the very services that we run? Why are property developers and people like Phil Knight given tax exemptions and cushy deals? Workers build the apartments and live and raise their families in them. Workers build the stadiums. We run the concessions. Student athletes provide the talent that draws the crowds. Regular people do everything, while the owner class acts as nothing but fat little piggy banks, only seeking to grow fatter off our lives and labor. We demand that the city council find another way to pay for the services besides the outrageous fire fee, a tax that puts even more stress on folks that are already overworked. Workers run this town, and so at the bare minimum, workers should have a seat at the table to decide how this town ought to be run. If the city council continues to act against the interests of the working class, against the poor and unhoused, against our librarians, our health service providers, our animal welfare providers, just remember this: actions have consequences, and those consequences are that people like me and thousands of others like me get hurt. Workers, students, librarians, professional caregivers, animal lovers, and everyone else being threatened by the loss of our basic services will not stand for this. We have been pushed far enough already. Thank you.
Aguiar, followed by Amy Code.
Councilors, members of the committee, my name is Athena Aguiar, and I'm a resident of Ward 5. Please keep the alternative response budget line that was previously used for cahoots. All the ideas that have been thrown out to resolve this issue, such as beginning a new contract with a new nonprofit that may be started by fired cahoots employees, and the idea of starting a government program similar to cahoots, require money. Please retain that budget line item whether or not there is a solid plan to bring back cahoots or an alternative program by the time the budget is adopted. For the reasons stated by previous speakers, I think it makes the most sense to take this money from the police patrol budget. Thank you for your time.
Code, followed by Brianna Rollo.
Hello, my name is May Code, Ward 2, and I want to thank all the people who came out to speak this evening. I don't have any numbers, but my kids were raised here. My daughter learned to swim in Amazon pool. We spent hours in the library. I love that building. When I worked downtown, I can't tell you how many times I saw cahoots work their magic and help somebody through a difficult time. These are vital services. They need long-term sustainable funding, not some short-term fix and twisting things around. We need these services here. I love this city. I love what it has. My daughter lives in Claremont, California now. She's so amazed by cahoots. She's trying to get it established down there. Please figure it out. Thank you for what you're doing.
Brianna Rollo, followed by Natalie Chichal.
Hello, Eugene Budget Committee. My name is Brianna Rollo, and I am a 6th grade math teacher in the Bethel School District. I live in Ward 8. I am here to speak in support of our library, recreation, and cultural services, and in particular, Sheldon Community Center. I worked at Sheldon Community Center for 6 years on and off, and have enjoyed every time that I get to step foot inside that building. I started working in the after-school program after I graduated from U of O, and I needed a job. I knew that I wanted to work with kids, and kind of outside, but I didn't know how. I jumped right into their programs and was amazed at how well they supported around 48 kids after school with tutoring, snacks, activities, and time for kids to be kids. When the pandemic hit, we tried to maintain community with online after-school activities, and during the 2020-21 school year, we ran a one-room schoolhouse. We actually had 2 of these programs to provide childcare to essential workers and support them in their Zoom learning. We had a special place where kids could play and be in community during such an isolated and stressful time. This was when I decided that I wanted to be a teacher, and the staff at Sheldon supported me 100%. They wrote letters of recommendation and cheered with me when I got into my teaching program. While I was sad to leave, I knew that I would never truly leave Sheldon Community Center. During my teaching program, I worked in the evenings at the front desk while Zumba danced on, and I did my homework. Once I started in my teaching position in Bethel, I took my one summer off, and after that, I came back to summer camps. I couldn't handle being home alone without my community. I'm speaking here today because community centers like Sheldon are incredibly special places that should not be the first, the second, or even the third thing dismissed when we are going through stressful financial times. Community centers, libraries, and recreational areas are, like the Amazon pool, bring people together in such special ways that they should be prioritized in our city budget. We live in such a digital age that kids struggle to form bonds, regulate themselves, and build friendships in person. As a teacher, I see this every day. Sheldon is one of those places where phones are kept away and kids play face-to-face. They play games, create art, go on adventures that build social skills, resiliency, and are fun. Over the years at Sheldon, I have seen the resources dwindle. There are no longer adventure and artsy camps like we've had before. Field trips have been limited. Snacks aren't quite what they used to be, but the staff works hard to create activities for the kids to remember forever, where they keep wanting to go back to summer camp year after year.
Thank you, your time has concluded. Our next speaker is Natalie Chuchok, followed by Ryder Hales.
Thank you for taking the time to hear our thoughts on the upcoming proposed budget. I know it's been very stressful, and we appreciate you very much for being here. My name is Natalie, and as a resident of Ward 3, I'm asking you all to fully fund Cahoots in the upcoming proposed budget. I became an EMT in 2020 at the wise age of 18, hoping to work for Cahoots, and I had to wait till I was 23. During that time, I went to school and I studied psychology, and I'm now a paramedic student at Lane. I work downtown, and I volunteer with a rural fire agency in the area. Besides being just a unique and important resource for the community of Eugene, Cahoots is the most affordable public safety option, effectively diverting hundreds of calls a year from police, fire, and emergency rooms. And tonight, I ask you to consider how much the lives and livelihoods of the members of our community are worth in dollar amounts. Inappropriate or delayed responses to our community's calls for service is the price we all will pay for the loss of public services. As the police grow more burdened, the fire department is stretched thinner than ever, and hospitals are overrun, it only makes sense to invest in a trusted, community-based initiative that has been proven to work for over 30 years in our city. This response reduces emergency vehicle hours, reduces costs and burdens to taxpayers, and appropriately responds to those in need. By freeing up our highly specialized, thoroughly trained, and devoted emergency responders to do what they do best, by employing highly trained, highly specialized, thoroughly educated and devoted crisis counselors and medics to do what they're trained to do, all those in our community receive the services they need when they need them. Aside from the direct diversions Cahoots performs, we effectively prevent calls from ever requiring emergency response. Community care and crisis intervention keeps folks out of emergency rooms, jail, and ambulances. Thank you all very much for your time and consideration, and I'm hopeful with your support that I can soon return to the job and career that I'm deeply passionate about and devoted to. Thank you.
Hales, followed by Tori Fish.
All right. Hello, good evening. I'm Ryder Hales, community member, UO alum, and a resident of Ward 1. I love the preface for this meeting that decisions are being made here that have an impact on people without the privilege to come and speak their voice. Using that as a guide, I want you to consider that Cahoots is an essential life-saving service. Yes, Eugene has budget problems, what town doesn't? But saying that we need to solve the budget crisis by cutting Cahoots is like saying we need to cut the fire department. And there are like patchwork solutions being proposed, but they're not sufficient. As I said, Cahoots is an essential life-saving service, and more than that, it's a precedent setter. It's nationally known. It was one of the first mobile crisis units in the country. Everyone here in the Budget Committee has a choice. Eugene can set an example for the nation, one way or another. You can set an example to reconsider your decision and show compassion to our city's and community's most vulnerable members. Or you can set an example to show a city and a city government that's willing to let people suffer and die. I encourage you to make the right choice for all of these services and resources, Cahoots, the library, Amazon pool, animal shelter, obviously for the people in our community who need it and for the well-being of our community, but also just for your own sense of morality and doing the right thing with the opportunity and privilege you have to be part of this committee. Thank you.
Followed by Eric Zira.
Hello, my name is Tori Fish. I'm Ward 4. I don't have a fancy speech, but I commend everybody who has those amazing speeches because I concur to what they've all said. I'm here to speak on Sheldon Community Center. My daughter goes there. She is part of the Easy Cares program, and they have a collaborative classrooms there, and it has been a life-changing thing for my daughter. Very sorry. My next daughter is supposed to go there as well, and now that's not gonna happen. And it's heartbreaking for everybody who relies on these programs that they're not gonna have them anymore. I really, really hope that you all can find a way to make this work. And we're not all here just so you guys can check up on us. Because honestly, I feel like that's what it is. I feel like we're just here so you can check up on us, and we're gonna go on, and you guys are gonna pass this, and everybody is gonna have some of the hardest decisions to make in their lives. Where are children gonna go to swim in the summertime? Where are children gonna go to learn? Where are people who need the help and not gonna die on the streets? Where are they gonna go? Where are animals who need the help? What's gonna happen? I am a very emotional empath person, and it's so hard to watch numbers being thrown around and that it's just a number when there is so many lives behind these numbers. Please, please, please take into consideration what these numbers mean and who are behind these numbers, and not just sign off, because it's not fair to the rest of this community who need these essential community services. It's so much more than numbers. I'm sorry, that's all I've got.
Speaker is Eric Zira, followed by Alicia Rabideau.
Good evening, my name is Eric Jura. I'm from Eugene, and I live in Ward 6. And I'm not going to be even close to being as eloquent as all the people that have come before me here to speak. I take medication to reduce stress. It's not working right now. I'm pretty distressed. I'm not going to repeat what was said about all the various programs that the proposed budget contemplates cutting. I certainly hope that that some miracle will happen and they can be revived. They are all obviously worthy, and I just tremendously moved by everything that I've heard here tonight, with the exception of one thing: we shouldn't defund the police. Sorry, I can't support that. And I mean that in all seriousness. I wish that a little bit of the passion that I hear tonight, which is fantastic, could be directed somewhere else, just a little piece of it, and that is towards the structural problems that our city has with funding, the issue of PERS and the issues of the limits on property tax. These are serious things, and if even a tiny amount of the passion that you hear out here could be directed towards, say, our legislative delegation or so forth, we could alleviate at least some of these problems. I was astonished to hear from the city manager's slides during the last budget committee meeting that last year the Oregon legislature passed HB 4045, which in effect increases the burden of PERS payments on the city and all other entities that support PERS. I just can't believe that they did that. I'm also astonished to hear that there's another bill being contemplated, Senate Bill 847, which would have a similar effect, and that's before the legislature now. So if you want to take concrete action to at least slow down this this train wreck, which is here and is only going to get worse, contact your legislators and get them involved. That's the concrete action that you can take. again, I know the Budget Committee is going to hear all of this and consider it very carefully and try to find a way to do away with this, but I don't see it happening. I support some kind of community service fee.
Rabido, followed by Aisha Ruzika.
Hello, my name is Alicia. I'm here to add my voice to the many people asking you to maintain a budget line item for Cahoots. I am speaking to you as an EMT, a crisis worker, and a former Cahoots van worker. These last few weeks have been dystopic, walking around Eugene, seeing crises, and knowing that Cahoots won't be there to respond. I personally have, maybe out of my best interest, approached multiple situations where police officers were engaging and offering support to people and tried instead to offer resources or such because that is work familiar to me, and was asked to move along. I think that not only is maintaining Cahoots or reinvesting in a new Cahoots the compassionate decision for this city, I do firmly believe it's the economic one. As a van worker, I can say, as Natalie and Laurel, many people have pointed out, there's just so many instances where people have been diverted from the most expensive forms of emergency care, emergency rooms, ambulances, police responses, jail cells, courtrooms. It's incredible how much money this city pours into all of those things, whereas those could be redirected by two salaries and two people's hourly wage and a van. I recently just learned tonight, actually, from some records requests that the lowest paid police officers at EPD make $36 an hour. The lowest paid Cahootian makes $22 an hour, and the highest paid makes $34 an hour. So I am urging you to consider, to look at the EPD budget as a source for money to move that into new Cahoots. I think this is like a golden opportunity. We can say candidly now that Whitebird, we understand, was a really difficult body to work with. Now, as a former Whitebirder, we're seeing things like coming out around embezzlement and difficulties with our former leadership, and I think so many of those problems will be avoided now working directly with direct service providers to create something new. This new form of Cahoots would be, again, an incredible opportunity, and those are the folks who know most intimately the needs of this town and how to develop a new service for that, and I think this opportunity cannot be missed. We cannot go another 2 years without capitalizing on this moment, so I urge you to continue communication with those folks and create something new. Thank you.
Ruzika, followed by Michael Williams.
Sorry. Hi. My name is Asia Rosiska. It's spelled weird, but that's fine. I blame my parents. But I'm actually here today to talk about Amazon Pool and a large part of our community that's often ignored is the disabled community. I'm a proud member of that. It's really cool. And water pool like that. Oh, also I'm from Ward 4 and I'm from Ward 6. I've lived in Eugene my whole life. And I've used Echo Hollow Pool growing up, and now I go to Amazon Pool. And the people that I see there, the amount of disabled people that utilize the services provided, whether it's aqua jogging or water aerobics or just swimming laps, that is essential for quality of life. And those pools, whether it's Amazon, Sheldon, or Echo Hollow, they are full. There's a line for all of them. Those laps are full, like the lanes, everything. People are using it within our community. Disabled people, the elderly, families. Living here my whole life, especially growing up in West Eugene, I grew up very poor, and those pools were affordable, and they kept kids cool during the summer. And we could go, in the Willamette River where people die because it's dangerous, or Fern Ridge where it's dirty. The pools are essential, and I'm very sad that you guys are considering closing Amazon when it's so important for so many people. And there's so many things that you're cutting that are so important for so many people. Living here my whole life, I've seen what Eugene has become, and I feel like it's kind of lacking. And I feel like we cater often to the University of Oregon out-of-state students or people that live here 9 months out of the year. And I think we need to focus on the community, the residents that live here, the working class, the disabled, everyone, like, that's here. And I would like to end this by saying thank you so much for listening to me. I know my voice is shaking, and I'm so happy that you guys are listening to everyone, and you're going to take everything they say and do it. So thank you so much, and have a good night.
Our next speaker is Michael Williams, followed by Heather Jones.
Hey there, my name is Michael. I am a recently laid off crisis counselor and medic with Cahoots. I had been with them since 2019. The closure of the Cahoots program in Eugene has been very devastating as a former employee. And, you know, it's really difficult to actually put into words just the feelings that we have had around this, not only former employees, but also the community as a whole. It's very clear to me that the community of Eugene takes a lot of pride in having Cahoots here and having it started here. I too am very concerned when I hear that the library, the Sheldon Pool, Amazon Pool, Green Hill, all of those other very important social safety nets are also closing. Primarily because, you know, as a Cahoots employee, I've personally worked with all of those different social spaces and found there to be incredibly helpful. And I just think that the need will continue to grow to just exponential levels with those other support systems being closed down. And I really implore the city to consider a way to keep Cahoots in service, whether with Whitebird or without Whitebird. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Heather Jones, followed by Jojo Breslin.
Okay, it's my first time doing this, so bear with me. Just wanted to take a minute to share some of my concerns regarding the proposed budget cuts. Firstly is the closure of the Sheldon Community Center. My daughter attends summer camp there. She has for the last few years. It's one of the few affordable childcare options that exist during the summer. I mean, pretty much any working parent knows what a nightmare it is to find childcare when school's out. And so in particular, those Sheldon summer camps fill up within generally 2 to 3 minutes of registration opening, and they'll have wait lists of 100+ kids pretty much for every program. The city needs more and not less childcare options. Those other programs that are through Amazon and Peterson Barn are equally as full, so it's not like the kids right now that go to Sheldon can just be transferred or picked up by one of those programs. Closing this Sheldon Rec Center might mean more kids stay home when they shouldn't, or stay with friends or relatives that are not as safe or good of a care option. The next concern I wanted to express was around the impact of the closure of the library, like potentially, I heard 2 days a week. For a period of time, I was a teenager who was homeless in Eugene. Have a very vivid memory of sitting at the library on I think it was like a Monday or a Sunday night, and watching the time tick down until it closed, and because that was one of the few safe places I had to be. Honestly, closing for even a few hours, let alone a few days of the week, have a massive impact to people in a similar situation as I, or in far worse, especially impactful during extreme weather. I know that's not really the intent of the library, but it's the reality of the service that it provides. And then finally, I just wanted to express some general frustration on how this is being managed. It seems like we're being presented this information at the end of April, and it's going into effect in July regardless. And I just wish there was maybe some more options around increasing the cost of the services or some other solutions being put on the table, because it feels like at this point there's no other option. And I think that's all I have time, or all I really had time to say. And also, don't close the pool. Everybody loves the pool. Sucks. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Our next speaker is Jojo Breslin, followed by Jacob True.
Hi, thank you, members of the Budget Committee, as well as our city councilors. My name is Jojo, and I live in Ward 2. I could speak today on many of the services that are unfortunately being defunded in our city with the proposed budget, but I want to focus today on Cahoots. It's been a highly successful program for over 35 years, and Eugene has been the model for the entire nation when it comes to similar mobile crisis units. And so it's very disheartening to see Eugene turn its back on the progress by not putting any funding towards Cahoots or an alternative in any sense. Cahoots pays for itself in dividends that go beyond what can be found on any financial sheet. They directly impact and save the lives of our most vulnerable, who would otherwise be subject to our costly healthcare system in a city that doesn't even have a hospital in its limits. They save money by having calls directed to them that would otherwise be responded to by the police, who will need to respond to more of these calls in their absence. Where police are paid more than the Cahoots workers, they accrue more overtime than Cahoots workers, and through the militarization of our police department, have a much costlier equipment cost than the Cahoots workers. It seems that in the aftermath of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, that the city's priorities for funding on alternatives have kind of fell on deaf ears, and the steps today show a complete leap in the wrong direction for the city. The county's mobile crisis service is the only place that we can now point them to in need, yet they do not do first aid or non-emergency medical care, housing-related interventions, or welfare checks that folks could rely on with Cahoots. Our citizens, the police department, fire, and emergency services all benefit, and they say too when asked about Cahoots' importance. They handle a great chunk of police calls in Eugene with an incredibly small rate of requiring police backup, not to mention the fact that they have not reported a casualty or injury of any sense. And they also de-escalate and prevent many situations that would otherwise have become more emergent. I agree with the city councilors who have mentioned that we need to look forward to long-term investments in our community, and I don't see any clearer slam dunk than prioritizing Cahoots funding at this time. As one city councilor had put it in Monday's meeting, the police are one piece of the puzzle among others, and though I agree this is true, right now, as far as this budget is concerned, it seems like they are the only piece being considered. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jacob True, followed by Raghuvir Parthasarathi.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Jacob True. I live in Ward 1. We've had a lot of talk supporting about Cahoots, and I agree with them strongly. I want to drill down a little bit into some of the numbers that we do have. It's a budget meeting. We haven't talked about numbers that much yet. So the Cahoots Whitebird had been funded by the city to the tune of just under $1 million. I'll put that here. According to a FOIA request, looks like the funding for Cahoots overall, after that just under $1 million, there was another bit of money from the CSI, and the vehicles were paid for. Adding that all up, it comes to $1.3 million. Double that for 2 years, because we've got the 2-year budget system going on here. That comes to just under 3. Compare that to the police. The police right now from the general fund and the CSI are getting $172 million, 173 just about. And per the Eugene Cahoots Town Hall, part of why the Whitebird folks needed to close things down was that only 40% of the costs of the Cahoots folks here in Eugene were covered by the Eugene city government. They were covered by grants and by personal donations to Whitebird. When the Eugene was cut even more, they were no longer to do so, and that's why we no longer have Cahoots. So, but if we wanted to square that up, add in, get up to 100%, for 2 years, we'd be looking at about $5.5 million. I'd say that's pretty fantastic. That is 3% of the police budget as it stands right now. And if we take a look at the calls for service in the Cahoots Town Hall, my estimate is that we're looking at about 12,000 calls for service in Eugene. Police overall had 115,000. This is all in 2024. So that is 10%. So we're looking at if you fund Cahoots to the tune of what they're worth, which is about 5.5. Talk to the workers, of course, get the actual figures based on working out exactly how you're going to do that. But based on my calculations, 3% there, and they're covering 10% of the calls. That's a fantastic value. So above and beyond all the moral aspects of it, not funding Cahoots is a pretty penny foolish way to do it. Thank you now.
Speaker is Raghuvir Parthasarathi, followed by Winnie Kerner.
Hi. So first of all, thank you very much for having this meeting and for listening to all of us. I'm Raghuvir Parthasarathi. I live in Eugene in Ward 5. So there are clearly a lot of very deep concerns with the proposed budget, and I share lots of the views that have been put forth very eloquently already. And I wanted to comment specifically on the proposed quite drastic cuts to the public library, specifically leading to its closure, complete closure on Sundays, of the downtown library on Sundays and Mondays. So the Sunday before last, in fact, I was at the library, which I often am, and near me in the adjacent aisle were two teenage girls who were browsing for books and chatting, which normally I wouldn't have given any thought to, but this was in fact the day that I had read this news about the proposed city budget. And so I was deeply sad about this, and in fact just wandered around the library for several minutes thinking that, not long from now, these doors would be closed to them for a large fraction of the week. And the library isn't just a repository of knowledge and culture. It's a place where families bring small children, and it's a place where teens learn to be independent. It's a place where the community meets. And perhaps most importantly, it's a free and non-commercial space for all of these things to happen. And these kinds of spaces are increasingly vanishing from our society. And I would furthermore say that it's things like this that are the reason for cities to exist. Things like the public library, the community centers, the pools, and so on. It's what makes us more than just a collection of homes and businesses. Finally, it pains me actually that all of this is happening also at a time where books are increasingly being banned and literacy itself seems undervalued in large parts of the country. And books, for good reason, I think, we look down on this. But decisions like this, or proposed decisions like this, make me ask which actually has a bigger impact on culture and literacy, banning some books or blocking access to all books for half of the weekend, the most accessible time for working people and families with children. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Winnie Kerner, followed by Sandra Bishop.
Hello, thank you. My name is Winnie Kerner, and I live in Ward 2. And first of all, I want to say that I've learned a lot just by being here and listening to what all the people have said and about some of the issues I hadn't thought about as carefully. I really see I have a lot of support for the things that have already come up. I'm here to talk about the pool, Amazon pool. I've lived here for 30 years. I raised my kids here, took them swimming, had picnics at the pool, went to the library, did all these things. And I now will go to that Amazon pool almost every day of the entire summer. So I want to tell you my observations are that it serves a very wide range of people of different ages. There are parents with babies and toddlers playing in this splash pool, a small pool for very young children to start swim lessons, all kinds of school-age children learning to swim. Think about what it might mean if your child didn't learn to swim. It's a life skill that is essential. And then we get on to the swim team and some of the sports and adults getting exercise, and I want to speak about the seniors like myself who use the pool. Many people have knee replacements, hip replacements, arthritis, injuries, all kinds of conditions where they can't gain mobility and exercise just walking or running around. They need the water, they need the pool. So this is serving an age range from babies to older adults from many walks of life. And I think it's short-sighted to close a place like Amazon to save a small amount of money when the services, when the total budget deficit for the community is so big. This is only a small part, but serves a large number of people. And it's also a waste to leave that facility unused, which is so useful for everyone and also brings in some revenue. So thank you very much for listening to my experience.
Our next speaker is Sandra Bishop, followed by Tom Bruno.
Good evening, councilors and other members of the Budget Committee. Thank you for allowing us to address the Budget Committee tonight. My name is Sandra Bishop, and I'm in Ward 2. And I am here to give you a bit of a solution and that is I'm here to talk to you about how to avoid costs. And want to go over 2 points today. I'll do my first point briefly first. Number one, open your budget process. Open your budget committee. You've been doing the budget committee appointments the same way for many years. It's not worked very well. You need to have a wider representation on this budget committee, so there are ways to do that. The second thing is, I want to ask that you not cut the support for neighborhood associations. It's less than $150,000 in the budget for the actual expenses that go to neighborhoods, or the money that goes to neighborhoods that are recognized by the city to be used by the neighborhoods, plus one staff or 1.5 staff people. So look very carefully at the rate of return. I'm here speaking tonight as an individual. I'm not representing the neighborhoods, but I'm on the Jefferson West Side Neighborhood Board. I also am active in the Southeast Neighbors. And if you look at what the neighborhoods do, you're going to see that you can avoid a lot of costs. Simply the maintenance of parks that the Friends of Parks groups do through the neighborhoods is a huge investment that the city doesn't have to make. The neighborhood group also designs and mails out newsletters that go to every address in town. You're paying the cost, but you have professionals that are, quote, volunteers designing those. So there's matching grants. That $120,000 includes the matching grants. You've got a tree inventory that was done. You've got safety equipment that was given away. So please look carefully at what the neighborhood money is doing and don't cut it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tom Bruno, followed by Penny Joyce Salus.
Tom Bruno, Ward 3. I'm also going to talk a little bit about neighborhood, and it's interesting that we both came back to back, but the city provided $120,000 for mailings to the neighborhoods. Now, a lot of people don't realize there are no cell phones, there are no internets in a lot of the neighborhoods. And this is the only way information gets transmitted. We had an outstanding meeting with Chief Skinner. Alan gave a fantastic briefing on the fire fee, and those informations were collected and passed back to the neighbors. Now, in the case of Laurel Hill Valley, we have probably the most land that has to go through a process with land use. If we cut out those mailings, then I'm going to challenge all the counselors. How are you going to comply with the land use requirement for neighborhood meetings? This is our means of communications. Now, in the case of Laurel Hill Valley, we're donating over 2,000 hours with city parks to build a nice bike path and nice walking path for Moon Mountain. There is a lot of cost avoidance, and what I'm asking you for is maybe $120,000 to keep and protect our ability to communicate with our citizens. I'm going to tell you, the presentation by both Alan and Chief Skinner and the city staff to our neighborhood meeting was one of the highlights, and that's where we got the most feedback from our neighbors saying, we need more of that. So I'm just going to tell you, I was a co-chair of Laurel Hill Valley. I sit on the Neighborhood Leaders Council, and I would just offer to say, you have volunteers. Now, I know Alan was an old water polo player. He could probably be a lifeguard out there and help. I was a lifeguard in my days. I have time, and I would like to be able to volunteer it, but we got to be able to communicate back and forth. Thank you.
Here is Penny Joyce Salus, followed by Kelly Johnson.
Hi, my name is Penny Joy Salas, and I've been in Eugene for almost 40 years. And I didn't plan to speak when I came, but when I looked at that list, it's a heartbreaking list, I just needed to come up and just speak on behalf of those services that are essential, standalone, irreplaceable services in this town, things that make Eugene, Eugene, essentially. So I really appreciated what the chair was saying at the beginning of the meeting. It felt like a very compassionate take on things, and I'm hoping that that can be used when you make your final choices, and with a little sprinkling of creativity, that, that these really essential services can be saved. Thank you for your work. I know it's not easy, and that's all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kelly Johnson, followed by Linda Ague.
Hello, Budget Committee. My name is Kelly Johnson, and I live in Ward 4. What a community we have. I am so inspired by everybody who's got up here and talked, and I'm just wowed. I just want to give you some food for thought. There's been a lot of great information that you guys have had here today, and that is about an effective use of a public dollar. There's cuts happening at every level of government, and so we really have to be smart with our dollars. And as somebody that's worked in the nonprofit sector in Eugene since 2011, I think partnering with nonprofits is such an effective use of a city dollar. Something like Green Hill, something like Cahoots is a way that you can expand city services. And as a nonprofit leader, our nonprofits have the smartest people, the really good workers, the experts in their field, and they know how to make a dollar go really, really far. And so when we think about these partnerships between the city and nonprofits, it's a great investment of a public dollar. Thank you so much.
Ague, followed by Daniel Berg.
Good evening, members of the Budget Committee and City Council. My name is Linda Ague. I live in Ward 4. I've spoken many times in front of City Council about my concerns about the services being cut, and particularly about the library. But today I want to sort of talk numbers. Earlier today I sent an email to the members of the Budget Committee. Hopefully I'll hear an answer, but I feel it's important to ask this question in public, increasing my chances of getting an answer. It is in reference to the current budget proposal, and the question is, why is the library being asked to cut such a disproportionate amount out of its budget? Particularly since the cuts made in the last round of budgeting were also disproportionately large. If the numbers I am using are incorrect, I hope to receive the correct numbers in my response, and I'll be glad to come back and correct myself and hopefully say thank you. If they are correct, then I understand the city is being asked to cut 1.8% from the general fund, but the library cuts represent 8% of its general fund portion. Why? Of course, I could be asking a much bigger question about this whole budget process, but that's a question, I guess, for the Chamber of Commerce and its challenge to the City Council vote. Feel free to fix that as well. The various news sources have already made clear that with the budget as it stands, the downtown library will be closed 2 days, and so far 7 staff positions will be cut. If 7 sounds like a small number, it is 27% of all the staffing cuts proposed across the city, and it's a huge number for those 7 individuals. According to the statistics from the Oregon State Library, the Eugene Public Library was visited double the per capita rate of any other large library system. And in case some of you are wanting to attribute this negatively to the number of people who seeing the library primarily as a safe, inclusive space, that statistics includes Multnomah as well. There are no good places to cut in this budget, but the library is a resource that rises to the same level of essential as areas that are, for some reason, being more protected from cuts. I ask that the Budget Committee spend some time in the library and then reconsider what is essential to making Eugene a vibrant, welcoming place. In the meantime, I look forward to your answer. Thank you very much.
Our final speaker is Daniel Berg.
Good thing I'm final because my voice booms out pretty loudly, so I might blow your mic.
I would normally be at the Echo Hollow Community Pool swimming right now, but I'm taking time out to be able to come and talk to you. I'm here to provide public comment in support of a senior group called the TPA. It's a group of senior citizens that goes and uses the Amazon Pool, the downtown branch of the Public Library, and the Green Hill Humane Society on weekly, and frequent basis in the case of Green Hill Humane Society. We want to urge the City Council to avoid fundamental cuts to these services. Amazon Pool is not underutilized, as it has been reported in the news media. It is actually used at such a level that they have to turn people away during the summer. Increased hot weather and hot weather spells during the summer make this not just an amenity, but rather a necessity for students and young kids to be able to access and old people to access every day of the week during the summer. Low-income families need to have access to this facility. Eugene has been a star in terms of the access for young people and for people across the community to be able to access a pool that's municipally funded rather than requiring an admissions fee be paid at the beginning of someone's use of the pool. One can drop in and just pay for the use of the pool. That is something that Salem does not boast and Portland is sorely lacking on. We need to maintain that service. Amazon Pool also provides access to swim lessons for young kids. We live in an area that has a huge number of waterways. It is it's an essential safety concern that we provide those services. I also want to advocate for the library. My mom is a former librarian. She would be very mad with me if I did not. But the City of Eugene Library provides a second space for people to go to and be able to be away from their work and away from home. It provides access to increased learning opportunities and reading opportunities for young kids. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll cut this short. The price for this particular thing, for this fee, is it's less than 2 cups of coffee per month. So please continue to fund these services.
That concludes public comment for the evening. I want to thank everyone for being here. That was very powerful and impactful. And there will be additional opportunities for the public to address us, the Budget Committee, on May 21st and May 28th. Next on our agenda, we have 2 staff presentations this evening. We're going to do a break in between. And as a reminder, the committee will wait to ask questions until after the second presentation after the break. But we're going to, before the break, hear about funding issues from Twyla or Sarah, my agenda says. From Twyla.
I'd like to keep you guessing, Chair. It's just going to take 1 second for this to connect to that.
So I can get started this evening. So thank you. I'm Twyla Miller, the Chief Financial Officer for the city. And a lot of time, we spend a lot of time talking about the general fund and the funding issues there. But we also wanted to talk a bit about some of the limited duration levies, bonds, and our community safety payroll tax as well. So we use this slide sometimes when we come to council to talk about funding issues and revenue measures. We update this at least once a year by reaching out to our governmental partners to see when they might be considering future revenue measures on the ballot. For City of Eugene measures, where things are placed here are the last possible election timeframe shown in order to maintain services without a gap in funding. However, measures can be placed on the ballot earlier. For May elections, council needs to take action by mid-February, and for November elections, council needs to take action in July before they go on their summer break. And so next, I'll talk about each of our current revenue measures. So first, we'll start by talking about the library levy. This measure was approved by voters in November of 2020, and it's a 5-year renewal of the 2015 property tax levy to fund portions of Eugene Public Library services. So the levy raises $2.85 million annually, and supports many services, including hours and access at the libraries, increase in free programs for all ages, and improvements in materials and available technology at the downtown library and the Bethel and Sheldon branches. The current library levy will expire halfway through the next biennium on June 30th, 2026. And if council wishes to have a library levy considered on the May 2026 ballot, council work sessions would need to occur this fall into January of 2026 in order for council to adopt a resolution by mid-February for a May 2026 election. The Parks and Recreation Levy was approved by voters in May 2023 and is a 5-year property tax levy to fund parks and recreation operations and maintenance and increase the public safety presence in parks. This levy renews and expands on services provided in the previous 5-year levy. The levy raises $5.3 million annually and supports services including public safety presence in the parks, improved general maintenance in developed parks, and habitat in natural areas, and new park development. Funding also includes maintenance and expanded access to newly renovated recreation facilities and increased recreation programming. Our current Parks and Recreation levy will expire at the end of fiscal year 28. And if this were to have a May of 2028 election, council conversations and work would need to begin in fall of 2027, with a resolution calling for an election adopted no later than February 2028. Before I move on to talk about our bonds and the community safety payroll tax, I did want to touch upon compression briefly. Since additional or increased levies impact the amount under the general government cap before compression begins. So Measure 5, as we talked a little bit about at our last meeting, was passed by Oregon voters in 1990, and this set a rate limit of $10 per thousand of real market value for general government operating levies. The current tax rate is under the limit, but it is getting closer with each new local option levy added or increased. We are currently just 34 cents away from the cap, and which would have us to start to experience compression losses. The potential revenue from a local option levy using the full 34 cents remaining under the cap would be about $6 million per year without triggering compression across all general governments in the category. Compression is computed on a per-property basis. When a property's assessed taxes exceed the limit, the tax obligation is reduced to the Measure 5 limit. Local option levies are compressed first, followed then by permanent rate levies. Each corresponding taxing district has its tax rate reduced proportionally until the tax limit is reached. The amount compressed is lost revenue for the districts. Compression essentially creates competition among taxing districts within the same category, and the actions of one jurisdiction can negatively impact another. New general government local option levies or new special districts can cause or worsen compression. So next, I'll talk a little bit about the street bond and the community safety payroll tax. These revenue sources are not included in the general government category, and so they are not subject to compression. So our current street bond was passed by the voters in November of 2022 to raise $61.2 million over a 5-year period. The services supported by the 2022 street bond include repairs to 42 street projects, covering 44.6 lane miles of roads throughout the city. $15 million is also included for walking, biking, and safety improvement projects to include bike lanes, crosswalks, off-street paths, pedestrian bridges, and street tree projects. The bond expires at the end of fiscal year 29. This was the 4th issuance of a series of street bond measures that began in 2008. If council would like to consider another street bond measure, the ideal election date would be in November 2027. This earlier date provides funding certainty for projects and allows for pre-designed work to proceed to have projects ready to build when the new bond would begin in the summer of 2029. Council conversations could begin in the spring of 2027, with council action required prior to council summer break in July of that year. And then we'll talk a little bit about our community safety payroll tax. The CSPT supports programs that provide faster, more efficient safety responses and deter crime. The community safety payroll tax resources are used to connect people to services engage and help at-risk youth, support more investigations in court services, and to hold those who commit crimes accountable. The CSPT is designed to be a systems-wide approach that serves the Eugene community in an equitable and inclusive manner. Services include police services, including the Street Crimes Unit, Community Safety Officer Program, and 911 Communications Specialist, fire and EMS services, including the Engine 9 Company, wildfire planning and fuels mitigation, and fire inspector position. Municipal court includes services for jail services and community court. Homeless services are provided, including the Rest Stop program and Day Resource Center, as well as youth services, including teen empowerment, behavioral inclusion, and youth and restorative justice program. The CSPT tax was established by City Council ordinance in June of 2019, and the tax was implemented on January 1st, 2021. In the ordinance language, by March 31st of 2027, the Community Safety Payroll Tax Citizen Advisory Board shall conduct a review of the city's community safety program and use of the payroll tax revenue in compliance with the ordinance, and shall deliver a report to the city manager. The city manager will provide the report to City Council, and City Council will hold a public hearing regarding whether the payroll tax is accomplishing the objectives and purpose. If the City Council concludes the payroll tax should continue, the council shall adopt a resolution no later than June 30th, 2027, to refer the continuation of the payroll tax to voters, which could occur in November of 2027. If the vote is not successful, the payroll tax will sunset after December 31st, 2028. I do have one more slide. This isn't in relation to funding issues, but I did want to provide a brief update. Last week, or 2 weeks ago when we were here, we were talking about inflation. I did mention that the state economist would have an update today, and so today the state economist released their newest report. As you can see by the blue line, the inflation forecast has not changed drastically from the last. However, there is a downward pressure, and the state economist will be very conservative as he looks forward. So there are no changes from really material changes from our last forecast, but I did want to provide an update today. We will continue to watch closely as the state economist continues to give more information. There is concern, of course, about the economy, federal actions, and geopolitical actions that may have downward pressures as we continue to look forward. So the state economist will be watching closely, as will we, and we'll give you further updates as we receive more in future updates. So with that, that's all I had for you today.
Thank you very much. In that case, I will go ahead and take us to a break. This is a 10-minute break, and it's 7:10 now, so if we can all be back at 7:20, please. minutes. I appreciate it. And we are back at 7:23 p.m. Next is our staff presentation on alternative response. This is our final staff presentation of this evening, then we'll move on to Budget Committee discussion. So I'll hand it over to Chief in Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Budget Committee members. My name is Mike Caven. I'm the Fire Chief here at Eugene Springfield Fire.
And joining him is your Police Chief, Chris Skinner.
He's here to make me look good. So we're here to talk about alternative response, kind of the suite of things that we've been doing over the last several years as we see challenges in the system and try to make adjustments there and, you know, imagine and learn more about the future challenges that exist. As we get going on this, I just want to express some gratitude to the Cahoot staff and Laurel for taking the time to meet with me last week and just better understand things that are in the systems and be a good thought partner on how we navigate through these challenges. So when we think about our alternative service delivery, you've heard this before on the fire side of things, that how we look at our options and where we ground in our priorities, and that's to achieve getting it right, the right patient, the right resource, the right level of service or care, the right mode of transportation, and the right destination for their needs. As you all might remember, some of you more than others, in the past for both police and fire, there was one way of addressing our services. It was either a patrol officer or it was firefighter paramedics arriving on a fire engine and a dual role ambulance. A lot has changed since then. Most of all is our service demand. And so as we think about this chart is a good representation of what the last decade has been like for the fire department. Even as we've added these alternative resources, our call volume has grown within the city of Eugene, in particular, 50% in 10 years alone. These alternative response needs, you know, allow us to identify those unique and specialized resources that are, you know, not necessarily the fire engine and ambulance showing up to every single call. And we'll touch on some of those specifics, ones in action and those that are planned for the future. Service level prioritization is another place where we've had to make some significant adjustments. And so as you see, as this curve climbs really fast coming out of COVID, and then a plateau, that plateau isn't for lack of people seeking the service, it's our resources being stretched to a point where we have to identify when are we going to send something out, and when are we going to either leverage our data to understand we can wait and see if that actually materializes into a call that requires a large response, or whether that resource can go in a different way. These are total call volumes in the city. Our total unit responses in most cases are double that, and we've seen more significant reductions in that space as we've chosen to not send every resource to every call. Equally as important as we think about our alternative responses is things that we're doing for our workforce as it hasn't grown despite the call volume. And we've been, especially coming up in calendar year 26, we'll be adding resources and a realignment of the work schedule that allows the workforce some better recovery time in this demanding system, and then also leveraging physicals, cancer screening, and peer support functions to make sure that we're taking as good a care of the workforce as we can, both mind and body. Changing landscape, we've heard a lot about in the last month with the mutual termination of the Cahoots contract that occurred on April 7th. You know, that process, that discussion began with notification to us and the rest of the community of a anticipated 90% service reduction to our contracted hours of service. Ultimately, we met with Whitebird, and the outcome was, as you all know, the mutual termination of the contract. Some of the challenges that we experienced over the years, and the couple years that the fire department oversaw the contract, was staffing within that workforce, data collection, and then challenges around cost recovery that were kind of core tenets of Senator Wyden's Cahoots Act, leveraging Medicaid and those other resources to help pay for mobile crisis service. Post-contract public safety impacts, and I want to preface this with 28 days does not make a scientific assessment of exactly what's happening in the system, but for both the police department and the fire department, we've seen on average less than a call per day increase in those suite of services that the Cahoots contract was taking care of. Very specifically within the fire department, that increase, or that one call per day increase, has come by way of either some type of primary or secondary impression of a mental health crisis or a substance abuse issue. But in general, our call volume is down in that same time period. So again, it takes time to really understand, measure those impacts, and also understand those gaps. That's the ongoing work that was a part of the meeting, to understand from the people who were doing the work in the community, what were the things that they were doing that we weren't privy to, and understanding how to identify and look for those challenges and gaps into the future. And work is ongoing, and to truly understand what that is and recommend solutions for the community. So of those things that were happening, where are they going? You know, the mobile or the mental health crisis, those acute crisis calls are going to Lane County Mobile Crisis. Second to that, when they're unavailable, is EMS or EPD patrol. And in the downtown core, and as they expand, the EPD co-responder team. And we also have the TIP program to assist us in those traumatic calls that our community is experiencing. And that TIP program is a group of community volunteers who are trained in trauma-informed practices, and the program is supported by the community safety payroll tax. Intoxicated persons, typically that's going to land to EPD patrol, their co-responder team, and then secondarily to that, EMS. Non-medical mental health transport, Lane County Mobile Crisis, Secure Transport. In those most extreme cases, EPD patrol for those folks who may have to have what's called a director's hold put on them, or effectively a hold because they're not able to make appropriate care decision for themselves. Immediate shelter, that's one of those challenges, a gap that's unseen to us at this point. And there's a part as we look to explore that we understand we're kind of entering that time of year here where, unfortunately, those people that are out there who are seeking shelter or space aren't as pressed to find shelter as the weather improves. Doesn't mean they're not there, doesn't mean there's not needs. First aid, chronic medical care. The county has a mobile medical system that they're standing up with funding from the state legislature. Right now, it only goes to 2 specific points. We'll cover that in a moment. The fire department has deployed an alternative response unit that's was funded through funds from the legislature's Innovation Fund following the closure of University District Hospital. That service area has improved from just the downtown core to the rest of Eugene as we learn more about where the actual needs in the system are. And then Ride Source, and we're anticipating meeting with LTD here in the near future to talk about their scope and capacity within that program where we can help leverage that. And then welfare, community service, EPD patrol, the co-responder team, and in those more extreme cases, EMS. So this is a slide you've seen before. It's a little bit different. I'm sorry for those of you looking at the screen. Some of those bubbles are harder to read as there's some additional information on there. But alternative medical response, when we look at that, for the fire department, that really changed in a shift of personnel and how we're leveraging them in 2016 with the establishment of the basic life support system. These are limited duration, newly minted EMTs who are working in the street on low acuity or really non-life-threatening calls, getting necessary experience and support from the fire department around scheduling so they can go to school to become qualified to work for us full-time as paramedics. The squad was implemented in 2020. You've heard that in various forms. That's a two-person unit that right now, until we have a dedicated funding to really deploy it full-time, is in peak demand, wildfire season, large storm issues, ice storm and snowstorms and such. When we have deployed it, we deployed it for a month in the wake of the closure of University District Hospital. It took almost half of all calls from the crews downtown at Station 1, who shoulder 25% of the workload in a 16-station system. So you might imagine it's pretty busy. The squad improves unit reliability by about 20%. Lighter, more nimble, able to move about the city freely. Mobile crisis services, as we see the transition to the county's program, they established that in 2024 and are growing their service level with a goal of being fully 24 hours a day by the end of June. Our alternative response programs were established in 2024, the first of those being AR1, which is part-time. We have a provider from Peace Health and a partnership from that to really treat people in the field as we go and try to focus on more outcomes-based versus response time-based systems. That will help us in there, but that funding ends at the end of 2025. From the Innovation Fund, we're working to understand what availability partners through Medicaid or Trillium and Pacific Source can help keep that program going forward. Our senior response unit, which helps reduce the burden on the system from our skilled care facilities, is both educational and response-based. They started here just a few weeks ago. And then our community response unit is in development in that light blue circle that you might recognize as community paramedicine, which is an important role as we're exploring where's the best place for that type of work to be, whether within the fire department or contracting for that service. So more to come on that. And then those green ones, we won't dig very deep in. They're in development. Nurse navigation, you all have heard about, at least the council has. That's a program to triage calls out of the 911 system. The company that does it's just focusing on systems where they are the for-profit ambulance provider. So I'll burn through these really fast. The basic life support ambulance, one of the interesting components. We didn't have those in 2014. We have 3 of them in the system now. Our advanced life support ambulances were running just about 31,000 calls in 2014. And they ran just about 31,000 calls in 2024, with the majority of the workload increase shifting to those basic life support ambulances. So it shows where the need's at. Those basic life support ambulances are incredibly busy, as are our advanced life support crews. The squad, I touched on that a little bit already, gave you the statistics of how that ran. But if you got really good eyesight, you can see the significant improvements in response reliability when they were in service through the month of December of 2023 during the university shutdown. Mobile crisis, I think the important part of that, and I touched on their growth and expansion, but the numbers that you see here, the 161 and the 285, that 161 was the month prior to the Cahooch contract ending, and the 285 is in the month following. And that percentage of growth or by volume are in line with some of the other data we had about the most kind of critical acute crisis responses previous. So the alternative response unit, again, it was funded by House Bill 4136. It's a partnership with Peace Health, primarily staffed with ESF paramedics. They're doing a lot of great work, and especially you see the most recent in late April, that jump in volume, that 42%. That has everything to do with expanding their territory, recognizing the needs in different places in the city, not just that geofenced area around the downtown University District Hospital. Senior Response Unit, again, this is a 2-year funded grant from the state of Oregon, specifically tied to addressing the care facility calls in our system, which are just over 300 per month. Seems like a small number. It's a lot. They're time-intensive calls, and many times are calls that don't necessarily require our full response to manage these issues. And so they're doing some great work in their initial reporting back. Currently in action, another grant-funded or innovation grant-funded program is Lane County's mobile medical clinic. They take them out to like Highway 99 and at dusk to dawn and the Navigation Center. And last month they had 56 unique patients, 107 clinical visits, and 49 people. So a lot of work to do in accessing the community to provide care. But again, as you've seen with these things, our goal is going from that ambulance or that traditional response to how many different ways can we treat the community, from they don't need help, inform and self-care, treat and release, 988 as that continues to develop, and other crisis services, telehealth consults, ALS or BLS transport to the hospital, or that alternative response unit, which the long-term vision is to be able to secure the ability to divert people to alternative destinations and relieve that burden on the emergency room. Again, future, we touched on this, the community response team being a upstream effort to pull folks out of the 911 system. It's some of what we heard in testimony tonight. It's finding people where they are and preventing things from cascading to needing the full suite of services, from ambulance transport to hospitalization and ICU. Nurse navigation, again, we were really close. Peace Health was there to support us in funding the first year. That company needed to divert to challenge systems in Multnomah County and elsewhere in Oregon, but we're on the list for that. And then FireMed Plus is a goal of ours to have an enhanced service that the community can both support our service, generate revenue, and get something for it as far as access to care and or advice. So. And then reimagining the program, just gratitude to EMS coordinator Amy Klein, came up through our single role EMS system back in the day, is doing a lot of work to connect our services to other community groups and eventually see us really at full speed. You're up.
Well, good evening to Budget Committee members and council. My name is Chris Skinner. Again, for the record, I'm your Chief of Police here in the city of Eugene. What I'm going to ask you to do is to shift your thinking a little bit, because as much as we've been talking about alternative response, it's been mostly focused around medical and or behavioral mental health types of response. But alternative response for us means a much more broad, encompasses a much more broad strategy for us as we think about the ongoing police reform efforts and how we navigate a different kind of response or an alternative form of response to meet the community's needs. And so Chief Caven was nice enough to give me one slide out of the 25, and so I tried to pack as much as I could into this. But here's some great examples of a police department with the help of the community safety payroll tax to think about how we do things a little bit differently within our community. And so this is our alternative response with respect to meeting community needs. And probably the one that is the most visible right now is probably our community service officers. If it hadn't been for our community safety payroll tax and the actions that this council has taken back in 2019, implement the collection in 2021, we would not have the 19 individuals that are serving our community differently, that are allowing us to get to more calls for service than we have before, and allowing us with non-sworn members answer calls for service that they're able to answer. Now, certainly we do not send them to situations that are dangerous or involve suspect interaction, but there are a variety of calls for service that we get in this community that don't need a sworn police officer to respond to, and so our community service officers do just a fantastic job of doing that. We'll just go around clockwise. We are leveraging technology like we've never had before. The advent of drones and public safety is not new, but it is definitely an industry standard now. We here in the state of Oregon have some very strict guidelines around how we use drones, and we're adhering to that. Our drone use right now is in partnership with our community on a couple of different sites, remote sites, one out west and one here close to downtown, where our drone first responders, when on duty, can get the 911 calls as they come in and determine what they need to fly immediately. And you can think about trying to get from point A to point B in a very complex city. Why drive a 3,500-pound automobile at Mach 5 to get someplace when we can fly it in half or a quarter of the distance and surveil and see what's going on so that we can better understand the resource need before we send it, and maybe more importantly right now, enhance public safety and including officer safety when we're able to do that. And so our drones as first responders is a project that is ever developing and ever seeking some changes in our legislature to allow us to be able to use our technology for all of public safety to include both police and fire as we move into the future. The housing support officers is a group of officers. Now, while these are sworn officers, what I would suggest to you is that these are officers with a special set of skills and understanding that the community members that they mostly serve as housing support officers. They are directly supporting our neighborhood service officers as they engage in certain cleanups in different parts of our town. These housing support officers deeply understand where the resources are, what the shelter resources are, try to connect people with those resources if they so choose to be connected. And so they're very skilled in what they do, and they are mostly addressing the issues in our community where we have people that are residing on private property, both business and personal private property, to include railroad property and or ODOT property that they otherwise should not be on. And so we have seen a tremendous amount of success in that area. And happy to report that in very few instances, we have to take enforcement action to be able to ask people to comply with the law around criminal trespass. Parks resource officers are not new. That's levy funded, as you can see here. Those, again, are people that are skilled and understand the nuances of serving our parks and the people that they engage in and park rules and all the nuances of that. And so we do believe that it's a bit of an alternative response other than just sending a patrol officer, and oftentimes our youngest patrol officers and maybe not as experienced or skilled trying to navigate that space. Our park resource officers do a fantastic job of doing that. Downtown co-responders, something we're really excited and proud of. It's in partnership with the Bureau of Justice Administration and the Community Safety Payroll Tax that we have a co-responder, a peer support specialist downtown that is paired up with one of our downtown officers. They are responding to those behavioral and mental health crisis downtown, calling in the appropriate resources. Lane County, partnership with Lane County, Mobile Crisis is an important partner in that. And what we are seeing is we're seeing our issues and the reoccurring issues that we're seeing downtown that feel so unsafe for people that oftentimes aren't criminal in nature being mitigated by having our downtown co-responder actually have those conversations. We're excited to say that we're recruiting for a second co-responder and that I think this is a model downtown for where we might be able to do this work citywide. And so we are thinking about how we expand that scope and make these resources available outside of the downtown boundaries. But we're seeing some really good results from that, and certainly an alternative response to what traditionally we've done downtown. And then lastly, My PD Connect, which is another piece of technology, again, funded by Community Safety Payroll Tax, which is a partnership between started as a partnership between the Eugene Police Department and a local developer around how we can allow people to report certain crimes online without having to have interaction with police. This particular solution is offered in a multitude of languages and is accessible to include some kiosks, or at least a kiosk in the police department that you can access to do that. What's really interesting about this is we reverse engineered it. Instead of asking a public safety company to find a way to better serve our community from a customer service standpoint, I went out and found a customer service expert and asked them to develop a public safety solution. And so what you have is you have My PD Connect that allows people to not only report, upload video and photographs, but also allows them in a drop-down menu to schedule a meeting with a CSO virtually. It's basically, if you've ever had a telehealth visit, this is a telecop visit or a tele-CSO visit where you can have a virtual meeting with the CSO and understand what your opportunities are and get updates on where your case is at. We're seeing this be wildly successful, and I'm happy to report that this partnership with this particular individual, he has taken this and we have as many as 17 Oregon agencies on this. Madison, Wisconsin has just went on this. Two two organizations in Montana. Alaska is coming on board, and so this individual has done what we've done together innovatively, and I think is going to make an impact across communities, hopefully across the country for him, for sure. So just an example of when we think about alternative response, that we don't just get completely and narrowly focused on alternative response as it results to behavioral and mental health crisis calls or medical calls, but we have a variety of people that need response from our public safety system, and we have to constantly be thinking about how alternatively we can deliver those services, free up our firefighters, free up our police officers to do what I believe this community really wants them to be focused on, which is property and life safety issues.
I'm not sure why you felt like you needed more than one slide.
Fair enough.
That concludes this presentation.
Thank you. Debating whether we want to do direct questions on the presentation or go straight to our round robin and allow people to include their questions in that. My vibe on the head nods is going directly to the round robin. So if you, I imagine, though, within the round robin, almost everyone's going to have some questions about things that were included there. So if you two would please stay at the table with us.
Don't go nowhere, Chief.
We'll be needing you. But we are going to move into budget committee discussion now. So we're going to do a formal round robin, going left around the table. We're going to take everyone at the table first, then turn to our one member who's joined us online, and then we'll have our round two be by queue and go from there for whatever further discussion we need. So we're going to give everyone 3 minutes to speak. The timer will flash red, and we have 15 seconds remaining. And please remember that we have the button on the microphone to mute and unmute. But before we jump into that, there is also a procedural piece I want to remind everyone of, and that is our motions process. We will be doing all of our motions in our final meeting on May 28th. That's the structure review. We're sticking with that same structure we've used in the past. So if you want to make a motion in that final meeting on May 28th, I ask, first of all, please work with your budget buddy from the and just making sure you're able to put together a valid motion that does what you intend and all of that. Please utilize staff always. Second, please, as much as possible, let us know and signal to us as a committee in your deliberations tonight and next week what you might want to change in this with a motion. The more advance notice we're all able to give each other about what we're working on, what our ideas are, the more we're able to come out of here as a committee with a collaborative process and make sure that people aren't duplicating each other's effort and trying to restore funding to the same thing in two different ways and leaving us with conflicting motions in the final meeting that are harder to resolve. So the more you're able to, in advance and in these deliberations, signal any motions you are thinking about making and as much detail as you can know about what you want to do, the more helpful that is to all of us in our process and our ability to succeed as a committee. So with that, we'll begin deliberations.
I hate going first. First thoughts, thank you to all the citizens that came and spoke tonight. I think there's a lot of things that we're contemplating that you all voiced that was very impactful and makes our decisions harder, but makes us know that it's more important. Sheldon Pool, I thought I took my son there to learn to swim about a year ago, so those comments got me a little bit, because reminiscing about that. But some questions I had on a couple of the presentations tonight. First, on the tax parts to Twyla. So the urban renewal districts, do those have an expiration date that they're going to be expiring?
Council has taken, thanks for the question. Council has taken action to extend those districts, and I don't know off the top, I'm looking to Mauricio, I don't know off the top of my head what the dates are, but there have been recent council actions over the last year in regards to both districts and the projects in those districts.
Cool, I was just doing the compression math and wondering when we get to add some pennies to that compression. And no problem if you want to follow up on that question. You did mention something that just made me curious, though, about the individual houses. So do those rates change at all per houses, or are those all set and they're across the board?
So when a property is comes on the roll, whether it was, or when the system was originally set, or new properties coming on the tax roll, if you're talking about their assessed value, or yeah. So that's set when a property comes on the roll, or or back, in the 90s when the system was created. So that is set and, only grows at 3%.
Perfect. And then last one, I think, for Twyla. So the street, I guess, and this is one we can follow up on, but I was curious about the two that aren't in compression. What percent of those, the bond and then the CSP, is the percent of their total budget, I guess? I was just curious, kind of like, is it a little bit, is it a lot of their total budgets? And we can follow up, because that's probably, I doubt you have it on the top of your head, so. Cool. And then, so for the chiefs, so we saw call types are changing, or they've increased over time. Are the types of calls changing as well? As you see, like kind of that big jump? Is there something that's changing in call types? I'm curious, or is it just kind of they're the same? There's just a lot more.
Yeah, I would say a piece of it is community members' access to care. So as we see the call volume increase, it is increasing by volumes around things that don't require ALS ambulances. And you saw that change in the future. And now we try to deploy different units, and now really getting to outcomes-based and preventative care around community paramedicine. That's how you get those out of the system and recognize that we don't hit the same nail with the same hammer forever.
Perfect, thank you. And then, so kind of thinking about the different alternative responses and some of the comments tonight, I was just curious, are there any types of calls that we're not fielding? I guess I kind of heard a couple comments about that, so I was curious if are we still accepting all types of calls, or is there any kind of calls we're not accepting?
Yeah, and not to speak for Chief Skinner's team, but doing this work for a long time, there's one thing dispatchers don't like to do, and that's have a call with no resolution on the screen, right? And whether that's to a community service provider, but typically it's fire, EMS, or police and crisis. So they don't go unanswered. I think where that gap that we're still trying to understand is the people who are just contacted by way of being out in the community in a different way, and that's one's a little bit harder to quantify. So we're still working on that.
I think that's all my time, because it didn't start on the last bit, so.
Thank you, Ryan. Next is Wendy Simmons.
Yes, I'd also like to say thank you to those who made public comment for the very informative, heartfelt, and thoughtful part you put into that. I'll just start with just a quick question on the alternative response program. So just to clarify, the downtown co-responder, that's mental health provider, is that what that?
Yes, ma'am, that is our co-response to, lower acuity behavioral health or mental health calls downtown.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for that presentation. And then questions I have on the budget, just on looking at our packet for this week, where Councilor Leach had asked about the details on the budget by expense, and it lists other expenses for about 4.3 million. And I know there's a definition of other expenses, but could you explain that a little further or give some examples of what those include? I'm on page 14. Oh, okay, sure. The other question I had was brought up in public comment, I think Linda Ague. Just, I know for good reasons, we don't ever probably do a straight across proportionate cut, but I am curious if you do have an answer for that question on the disproportionate amount of cuts for the library and the 7 staff positions.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to actually reply to her and check the math, but I will say this. We haven't done any of our budgets with an across-the-board solution. I can't think of one that we've proposed. What I think is confusing that is that when we did that exercise showing what the potential services at risk were, we actually did do it sort of across the board. So she's correct. Library, recreation, and cultural services, if you look at percent of general fund and percent of cut, has taken a larger cut, and it's because as we've worked collectively as a team trying to understand what council's goals are, what the strategic plan asks for, and what we have been understanding as the conversation, and putting together what we think holds the community together as best possible. That's how it worked out. It does it's probably disproportionate.
Thank you.
And I can,
go ahead.
if you want, I can provide an answer on the other expense question. So across departments, they're different, but for central services, other expense would include city council meeting expenses and council contingency funding, for PDD and police, certification, accreditation, and licensing fees probably for other positions across the organization, vehicle uplift costs that are not capitalized as part of total vehicle cost in public works. So those are the types of things that are other expenses.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. I guess I would say, yeah, it's hard listening to the comment and how important our libraries, our pools, our community center, Cahoots is, but, well, not but, and I will work for all of those services, but I would like to work on at least restoring the animal services and the green health contract. So that will be one of my priorities, and to find revenue, and I'm hoping others will want to collaborate with that, and I will put that out there. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ye?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone who came and spoke, and for those of you sticking around with us late tonight. I really appreciate it. I had just 2 questions. First, for Chief Caven. So I'm sure we've all seen the ALS emails that we've been getting, but I'm wondering how our BLS ambulances are fitting into that picture and how they help to provide for that need that we're seeing.
Thanks for the question, Councilor Ye. So if we go back to the slide in the presentation, the lion's share of the call volume increase over the last decade has been shifted to those units. And so there are times when we're incredibly stretched thin and our ALS units are gone. BLS units are available if they are sent to ALS calls, which happens. The paramedics from the engines are able to jump on those units and right in the hospital and not have a gap in care. Doesn't necessarily mean that the system is not incredibly taxed, but that's a new and or at least relatively new and unique resource that we're able to leverage. And in recent months, with our contractor, our private provider who does primarily interfacility transports, we call upon them to cover street level calls. These are not ideal scenarios, but at the end of the day, we have those resources available to help meet that need. Our crews do a good job getting free from the hospital and trying to cover these calls, and sometimes those emails can be generated by crews coming available, and they do everything they can. If you listen to our radios, you think they're fighting over calls. They're just trying to cover their work, knowing that other really busy ambulances are trying to do the same.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very helpful. My other question is in a totally other area. Thank you, whoever wrote up the answer to my question about our Equity and Human Rights Department. I had a question about one of the things on the list, that we would be reducing our capacity to support victims of hate crimes and discrimination. And I'm wondering, what does that mean would be gone? I should have given you a heads up, Mia, I'm sorry.
So you might recall that over a year ago, the state of Oregon started fielding hate and bias crime activity. So while we may get calls, we refer them to the state of Oregon. They're now taking care of all of the reporting and support to victims that we used to case manage in our Office of Equity and Community Engagement.
Okay, so are you saying that we would have reduced this anyway because it's something we're no longer going to be doing?
Yes, we were working towards reorganizing the work because that's no longer on the plate of that position.
And would be done somewhere else and not local?
Correct.
Okay.
We still have a relationship and a conduit, as does EPD, but it looks different now. We're required to use the state.
Oh, we're required to?
Yes, yeah.
Oh. Okay, I might come and ask you some more questions later. That's a little concerning, but I appreciate you sharing that with me. And those are all the questions I have at this moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Siobhan Consell.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to echo everybody else and say I really appreciate all the community members coming out and speaking to what really does kind of tie us all together as a community in this area. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to try and start with the easiest questions, and if there's another round, maybe go to the ones that can be followed up via text. I appreciate that people do take the time to answer our questions via text. My first one is, and I missed this from the last meeting, I'm sorry I didn't write it down quick enough. Can somebody tell me what % of our budget is EPD and what % of our budget is the EMS, the fire and safety? I think it was the general fund that was being referred to last meeting. It's so funny, I got all the other departments, but fire and EMS and police department I didn't write down. 37.
Hold on one second. If you want to go to your next question, I'll find that one.
Okay. So as I want to echo the issues with having the cuts to Green Hill, I need a little bit more information. Do we know what % of the cuts from the animal welfare budget will affect the total budget of Green Hill? And is Green Hill in danger of closing? Is that something we know? And I heard something earlier today. Does the county contribute any funds to Green Hill? I could go.
I'm multitasking.
Okay. I mean, we do have the ED here.
No, it's not actually appropriate, but.
Okay, sorry.
Can you just repeat that last part?
I'm just trying to better understand how these cuts will affect Green Hill. And so I'm curious with the animal welfare part, do we know what percentage of their budget will be taking away with that? Is Green Hill in danger of closing? And does the county provide any assistance to Green Hill?
Yeah.
And I could go to.
Yeah, so we don't have all those details, but I'm assuming that you're going to get an email later this evening from somebody that can give you those answers.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so with everything that's going on, I try to stay optimistic. And so I'm curious, what happens if we find other funding? Is there like a priority list of which areas would receive it first? Will we get together again and have like a supplemental budget meeting like we've had in the past? Just, keeping hope alive that we might be able to figure this out.
Yeah, I think it's really going to depend on what the amount is that if there is an amount decided and when that decision is made. If that decision is made as part of prior to the adoption of the budget, there's a possibility it could all happen in the same night. So if it's the same amount that was already built in the budget, the things that we have in there would be restored. But if it's a smaller amount, then we would have to, that conversation would come forward, I think, from council.
Got it.
And it could happen in a supplemental budget, or it could happen before we adopt the budget. So stay tuned.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, so if everything stays the same, how long do we envision our library, the pools, the community centers being reduced or closed? Is this an indefinite sort of thing?
If everything stays exactly as it is now, yes. It's an ongoing service reduction.
Thank you. I just had one more. I know I do. This may be for Chief Skinner about the My PD Connect. I know it's kind of new, but is there any reports that show any trends of different types of crimes that are being reported or violence? Has any of the data been collected enough to show a trend in our community?
Thank you for the question. One of the nice things about this particular solution is it has full analytics on the back end. But all it analyzes is the types of crimes that it's allowed to intake. No violent crimes are being took in by that particular, it would not be appropriate. If a violent crime is in progress, the appropriate response would be call 911 and then give an immediate response. But we can do analytics on the types of crimes that are being reported on that.
I don't know if I could say it in 2 seconds. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you. And I'll answer your question and give props to Councilor Clark, who was right when I corrected him and said he was wrong. He was right. You were right, I was wrong. Police, if you look at just the general fund, police is 37%, fire and EMS is 23%. Then you have some, so those are the two. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Councilor Keating.
A municipal angel just lost its wings. Councilor Clark was right at the dais. I love you, Mike. Hey, I want to say thank you as well to the scores of community members who provided compelling testimony around saving and/or restoring funds to Green Hill Animal Services, the library, Amazon Pool, Sheldon Community Pool, and of course Cahoots, referencing it as a new Cahoots, Cahoots 2.0, whatever it's called. I too long for a revival of such a valued, trailblazing, trusted, life-saving service. I especially want to call out Penny Joy Sales, who said, quote, essential, standalone, irreplaceable services is what we're talking about, that make Eugene, with a little sprinkling of creativity. Now I can't read my own writing. These essential services can be saved. Thank you, Penny. I concur, and I want to thank and respect Michael Williams, Alicia, Eric, Giron, Amy, Natalie, Ryder, and Laura, who worked for Whitebird/Cahoots. You are all dedicated public servants, and I thank you for your service. Chiefs, question about Cahoots. If Whitebird and Cahoots, or Whitebird in particular, couldn't adhere to various federal mandates around data collection to properly secure Medicaid funding, how are they able to still operate in Springfield?
No, rock, paper, scissors? Okay. Because they're operating on a 12-hour contract for service that had previously been, and again, this is somewhat hearsay, because I can't speak for the city of Springfield, with some one-time funding from the county over the last fiscal year to help pay for that. And so it's straight funding. They're not doing cost recovery. The system's a little bit different over there on the types of calls they're going to. But nonetheless, it's funded by that partnership.
Thank you. In January 2024, KLCC reported $13.8 million of our payroll tax went to EPD. Of that, the largest share of funding, as I understand it, goes to patrol and community service officers, with funding, quote, set aside for 911 and other programs such as Cahoots. This was a KLCC story in 2024. Were there dollars set aside to Cahoots from the community safety payroll tax?
Yeah, about 125,000 a year, so 250 for the biennium. It was the gap funding.
Okay. To be perfectly transparent, I long for a revival. I long for a new nonprofit partner. I'm consistent in my advocacy for a new 2.0, a new Cahoots 2.0. In addition, just so there are no surprises, similar to how this body operated in the 2023 budget cycle, when we we made a strong public safety argument and took 911 operator dollars and housed them under the community safety payroll tax, and freed up general fund money to cover the cost of the contract with Green Hill. I appreciate the collaboration to make that happen in 2023, and with that same spirit, I look to do something similar this budget cycle. Thank you.
Councilor Keating, just to clarify, so the swap we did on a one-time basis was the co-responder, the downtown behavioral co-responder on a one-time basis with the community safety payroll tax. We are, as we've talked about expenses growing overall, we are watching that fund very closely as well, just as far as their revenue streams to support existing expenditures. So there's not unlimited funds within the CSPT to fund alternate services. The other clarification, just for the record, is for the reductions under consideration this round, there's not a reduction to the Sheldon Pool, it's for the Sheldon Community Center.
Thank you for the clarifications.
Thank you. Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to thank all the folks that came out this evening and gave testimony from their hearts tonight. I thought that was very effective testimony this evening. By my count, it was 34-1 for not making in favor of the cuts, the one being the chamber. I would have a question to you, Chief. You don't have to answer it tonight because I don't think you can. What would it cost to pull the Cahoots at the service level that we had before in underneath the city umbrella as employees, and what would be the pros and cons of doing that?
We'll have to get back to you on the cost of doing that.
Yeah. I thought you might. And the other question I had was the funding that we got, additional health services funding that the legislature provided in the wake of the University District Peace Health Hospital closure. For how long is that funding?
So different components of it have different expiration dates. For our alternative response unit, the expiration was December 31st of 2025. So
at the end of this year.
Yeah, and the alternative AR2 comes from a different legislative-backed funding source to address the senior skilled facilities.
Is that one ongoing?
Sorry, is your mic on?
Yes.
That one is for a full 2 years.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Krasinski?
Yes, thank you. I also want to thank everyone who came out to testify tonight. This is a budget that breaks my heart. I think it is in a lot of ways a very atypical budget because a lot of the types of discussions that we would normally have around this table are being deeply influenced by discussions that are being had at the council level. And so I would encourage people who are concerned about this budget to watch those discussions as well. I would also say that there are things that are being cut in this budget that we're not hearing about from public comment because not everybody in our community reads the budget in depth. And with the number of cuts we're seeing, there are things that are in these cuts that I think people are going to be deeply impacted by that are not being highlighted in our public testimony or being highlighted in the news because people just don't realize it yet. And so I think that's something that we should keep in mind when we're having discussions about what are we going to save particular things? Are we going to look at particular solutions? Is recognizing that just because we're not hearing a huge community outpouring about this particular topic doesn't mean that that cut isn't going to hurt and hurt a lot for some folks. getting onto questions. One of the things that is listed as being a cut in the budget that is proposed once we no longer had the fire fee included in the budget was the alternative response planning chief. What is the impact? And we're talking a lot about alternative response and how that's working. And I know that that was a vacant position. That was a vacant position right now, right? No, it's not vacant? Okay, I misread who was vacant and who wasn't. I apologize.
What's your question?
I wanted to know what the impact of the alternative response planning chief position being eliminated would be to our ability to effectively coordinate and implement this diverse suite of alternative responses.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The reason that's not listed as a position that would be lost or kind of shows up as a vacant position is the individual who's serving in that role right now was brought on a temporary basis because this was a new thing in a biennial budget, and we had concerns on the overall health and unknown of revenue, and so that person, should the position be cut, would go back to their previously held rank. As far as what we did with that, like so many other departments of this in the city, when we get a new position, there's a lot of things that we have it do. And so in addition to the planning of alternative response, tied to that, and most specifically is the EMS operations battalion chief. And then Amy, who you saw doing coordinator work, that position is supported by the city of Springfield. So it's kind of a suite of things that we did to address all of those changes that we've made with a new workforce, not only in BLS, single role providers, and those alternative response people. So is there one person that's impacted by that and a position rolled back? Yes. Does it have touches in various places around the growth of our EMS system? Yes.
Okay, so that is probably something that would have a sort of service level impact on our ability to effectively coordinate all these different services.
Coordinate to go after the funding for alternative response things that, that it's grant and it's staff time. That's pretty limited.
And so I guess that leads to my next question surrounding the alternative response, which is several of these things seem to come out of what sounded to me like limited duration state funding. And they're being set up as pilot programs and things like that. Do we have a sense of if that funding is going to continue, or are we going to be in a place where we've created all these really amazing programs that are serving our community and then we can't continue them?
I think that's a fantastic question. Yes, they are limited duration by way of the grant funding. Throughout the innovation process and the planning for that, it was a broad coalition of providers that were at the table, including Trillium and Pacific Source. And they have a lot of interest in these diversionary type programs, these alternative programs, but they also wanted to see them in play to determine how exactly they would fund that, either on a reimbursement for service, but in some cases per member per month services. So not only in sustaining our programs, had a similar conversation about how those programs interact in this space with the Cahoots workers when we met last week. That's just a source. So really the test with innovation funding was get your concept out there, prove it, and then see that those existing revenue streams, particularly funded through Medicaid, are there to sustain them going into the future. That's where the staff help move that forward and secure that, but tenuous until certain.
Yeah, it sounds like might still be a little tenuous even after that piece gets sorted out. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for these presentations and this work.
Thank you. Ryan Moore.
Chair, this thing is on, right? Great. Wendy, I'd love to work with you on your Green Hill proposal. And I know that part of that entails finding somewhere else to make a reduction. And I want to point that out to say, I hope I don't sound too patronizing for the audience, but there's a lot of justified ire out there. It sucks having to do this, and the budget is a zero-sum game. Staff have done an inhuman amount of work to minimize the harm that's caused, and we haven't recognized that enough. It sucks all around, and it's hard work. So I want to emphasize this for the audience. bring your ire, bring the anger and the frustration, and also please help us look for other places where we can make what you may see as a less harmful change. That's what I hope to work with Wendy on, maybe this weekend, sometime soon. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Chiefs, and I think this is Caven, but I don't know for sure. I'm going to ask you the hard questions now for a change of pace. We are all getting input, wonderful input from our community about what the community wants to see us do, whether it's through fantastic testimony tonight or whether it's 3 million emails that we've all received. There's a few common themes. One of them is restore cahoots. Okay. This group has to think about how they would do that if it were at all possible. So my questions are the tough ones about if the money was found to restore that contract. I know that that contract doesn't exist. Are we, as a result of not having that service contract in place, are we experiencing holes in our service capacity that we need to fill by figuring out an answer to that problem?
You weren't kidding on the hard
No.
question.
Because we have to plan for what are we going to try to fund.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to hear, have you responded to your satisfaction to fill that hole, or do we need to come up with something?
So like I mentioned, 28 days doesn't really tell the full story.
Right.
You got to see weather changes and cycles and needs. And some of those things are going to fester, some of those chronic medical conditions and the direct link between mental health to physical health will manifest in different ways, and we'll see those start to bubble up a little bit more. So as it stands right now, is there a gap we've seen? No. Do I believe that there's a gap in access to care and follow-up, and that there probably is. The question is, who's the right provider to do that? And so in any case, we would have to do another RFP. And if, money was going to be there for that, we'd have to have a very intentional conversation of what's the service we expect, and especially in knowing kind of the changed landscape with Lane County mobile crisis. And so there's a broader discussion, a part of why we open the dialogue with the Cahoot staff to understand sometimes acknowledging we don't know what we don't know, and to make sure that we can account for those when the time comes. So the answer was probably as hard to follow as your question was hard.
I appreciate that. It's the intent of what we do about the problem that I'm trying to feel out here with this question. So you've helped me understand your thinking there. I would say that, I'm asking the expert, are we experiencing a hole in response? And I would expect you to say, no, we'll cover what's needed, because that's what you guys do. You salute and say, yes, sir, we'll handle the problem, okay? But that's a different role than what we have at the table, which is respond to the community members who may feel that hole exists for their own reasons, okay? And so more information about what's possible and how you would negotiate it, even if we had the money to write the check easy and make the contract, how do we move forward with that? I know that's not something you're probably going to answer tonight, but it will play a role in how we, solve the budget problem, but, what do we plan for and what do we do tomorrow? So I guess I'll let you off the hook with giving me an answer tonight.
I actually want to just chime in, though. In my budget presentation, I talked about one of the benefits of our shifting to a biennial budget is that we have a little bit of flexibility because we're working with 2 years of funds, and that we saw that come to our advantage when the University District Hospital closed, that we were able to kind of immediately respond to that, and then we could follow up with a supplemental budget. And the same could apply here. We have multiple times to come forward with a supplemental budget. We have a little bit of flexibility. So if there's a real need on the street, we're not going to wait for the next biennium to say, hey, we need funding. We'll be addressing it and working on an RFP and coming forward with a supplemental budget. So that's always an option.
Yeah, I don't have to do the jobs that you guys do every day, but I find it a service to our community that we need to have, from my point of view. But, you know, so I'm happy that we'll have some options to have those discussions as time goes on. Thank you very much.
I would just add one point to that as we look to fill those gaps and have open dialogue with the staff that are trying to revive that and work through various grant programs. We're trying to support where we can and inform each other on that path forward, whatever that looks like. But we'll be very intentional about this process.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jesse Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echoing everyone, it probably isn't necessary because I think everyone will do it tonight, but I think it is, everyone deserves thanks for coming tonight and the over 350 emails we've received in the last week. I also want to thank staff for pulling me an Excel spreadsheet so I could Command F all of the emails, much easier than scrolling through my email. So that was actually very helpful. And everything that was talked about tonight was overwhelmingly talked about in those emails as well. And keep them coming, for sure. Chief Caven, I was curious about on your slide, service demand continues to rise in the city of Eugene, specifically increasing 50% in the last 10 years. I know we know the answer, but would love to hear it. What has staff increased in the last 10 years?
In the last decade, we've added, kind of on a temporary basis, an additional medic unit. Sorry. But that's it.
Okay. So building off of that, curious about, obviously these call volumes plateauing and dipping. Clearly there's times where you can't respond because you've got too much out. What is mutual aid looking like, and then what is that doing to our neighboring communities as well?
We're in a unique space. We have a very busy system, and as far as mutual aid goes, oftentimes we're giving it versus receiving it, sure, even as busy as we are. 'Cause we have a very interesting patchwork of properties within the urban growth boundary that it makes better sense to send the service and figure the rest out after the fact. So the one place where mutual aid comes in quite frequently is the ambulance service. You might see an ambulance from Lane Fire Authority in Thurston any given day because we don't have any available resources to send. And they've actually added an ambulance because of that. And we experienced that here in previous years. Springfield added an ambulance, not because the city of Springfield needed one, but because there was a volume of work here in the city of Eugene that they were helping cover.
Sure. Councilor Clark kind of hit one of my questions too about the, not picking up calls. Obviously, there's going to be an issue there. I don't know, at 28 days, we're not going to have data, and it's a lot of anecdotal stuff at this point that are people not calling because they know Cahoots doesn't exist anymore. And I don't know how we get to that answer, and I don't know if we can, but it's obviously going to be a conversation piece out there. That's not a question, but you can answer it, I guess.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're not certain who's not calling, and then quantifying those contacts made while they're out working in the community already. There's some equivalency to that in total call volume. And just, clarification, city manager.
Oh, yes.
I mean, a lot of these alternative response programs, sometimes when you ask the question, I think operationally, what have we added? A lot of these alternative units and BLS are things that we've added to try to address that growing call volume.
Definitely appreciate that. I think, again, maybe not necessarily a question, more of a statement, I guess, adding my voice to I think we talked about this at a previous budget committee meeting, but different fire governance structures, just truly seeing if that's not going to solve our problems today. But moving forward, it's something I would add my voice to in looking into. I think looking at fire district or what have you as alternatives on the theme of alternative responses. So I think that would be something to look into as a group moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Groves?
Thank you, Chair. And I want to lend my voice to thanking everybody who showed up tonight to speak. I know that's not always an easy thing to do, but it's very much appreciated. And Carrie, when you're sending the information to Saban, could you include all of us in that? Because I would like to see that as well. I'm concerned with all the reductions, as we all are. I'm especially concerned with Green Hill because I look at it more than just animal preservation and helping animals. It's also a public health situation. You have a lot of strays, and that's a fast way to spread disease, and that can even get into human populations, but certainly domestic animals. So I'm interested in that. I'm also interested in resurrecting cahoots, but I want to dig into that a little bit on chiefs. Thank you both for your presentations, but specifically looking at kind of the plateau we've hit with cahoots offline. Can you speak to mission creep?
Can you get a little more specific on mission creep?
Cahoots has a scope of work that they were doing, and my interest is if and when we rebuild the system, that we get back to a defined, specific scope of work. You know, what are the deliverables? What are the expectations for outcomes? I mean, I still used to lead the fire department, so I still talk with firefighters. Well, yeah.
Me too.
Before you. But anyway, getting back to the whole piece of calling for cahoots and cahoots not being available, but it doesn't always show up as tied up in the 911 log. What are they doing?
Yeah, and I mean, we have some data, again, that's where the incompleteness of like, what were they called for? But then when we look at the AVL, you know, they were kind of all over the community in doing things. But I think when we look at, you know, that 2.0 contract, whatever that might be, being very specific to what it is the system is looking for to fill those gaps and how we can pair their mission to our expanding need. You know, community paramedicine is a, or, you know, really the term is mobile integrated healthcare. What can they do to ease that burden? And can we be a little more thoughtful of, this is what the contract is, this is how we support each other, collect that information. I think the staff are pretty tied into getting qualified to access that Medicaid money and all of those things that help keep it in a sustaining space.
Great, thank you. And thank you for raising the issue of governance for fire. That's another big issue for me. But in the time I have left, I want to go back and address something that was said earlier. Councilor Zelenka mentioned that everybody was trying to save services except the chamber when they talked tonight. I heard a very different comment out of the Chamber of Commerce and their CEO, Brittany Quick-Warner, saying that they want to find a way to save these services, and she actually presented some concrete avenues for doing that. I don't know that those will all work, but I think it's worth exploring, and I would encourage Ryan, you, and Wendy, when you're looking at finding alternative funding to help save the Green Hill contract, at least talk to Brittany and the Chamber, because they have real ideas. In fact, those same ideas were shared Monday night at public comment. Councilor Zelenka, you weren't here for that. You were absent. So anyway, I just wanted to have that in the record as a counterpoint, because I keep hearing these comments being made, and I'm seeing a very different situation to this. So with that, I'll end my comments, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Morgan Mann?
Great, thank you. First thing is a follow-up to Councilor Clark's question on cahoots. Now, I'm looking at you, Chief, because you're doing all the answering for this topic.
Yeah, more slides.
So if cahoots and the county's mobile crisis service were both funded, would these be redundant services in Eugene? And would there be material differences between the two?
I think it's an interesting question that we need to dig into, right? Part of the reason the county stood the program up was that they had a legislated obligation to do so from 2019. There was some grace period and some time to get it going. And we had worked with Whitebird at the time last year and really got close to trying to see cahoots be the model for the county. things didn't work out, and that's okay, and they had to stand something up and step into that space. As we imagine Cahoots 2.0 or some other version, there's going to have to be a lot of collaboration, partnership, and dialogue in what the scope of work is and what the expectation is. There's still some holes that exist in various types of crisis response that the county's not filling at this point. But again, it would be very thoughtful on the contract and make sure that it's there. There can be, nothing in the legislation says there can't be two. And the closest, most appropriate for critical emergencies is available for that. But again, it ties into that whole, be real thoughtful about what the scope, what the contract looks like, how we do that RFP.
Great, thanks. And maybe a newbie question for the CFO and city manager on, are there any revenue opportunities with the UO, particularly around like police and fire services for football games and other big events?
Yeah, actually, when we pulled the revenue advisors together, there were a lot of questions about the U of O, so we have some materials that we can provide to you. Some of the services that we provide, like police services, are already done under a contract with the U of O, but that doesn't include everything that happens around the edges of that, to include parties in the neighborhoods, which are not backed by revenue. But there are opportunities, and they're pretty well covered in the revenue report.
Great, thank you. And then follow up on expenses. What type of travel expenses are incurred by the city for employees, for conferences and things like that? Does the city, and also does the city currently provide any like work from home stipends as a leftover from COVID days?
So the city does cover travel for if there's a conference, so it would be the travel to the conference, the conference registration, things, so there's a range of conferences that people go to for continued professional development and also to keep their required licenses for the city. So any of those kinds of costs would be related to travel for a conference or a certification would be covered.
A big number or a large number?
We'd have to, relatively speaking, not large, but we can provide a number for you.
Okay. Thanks. Lastly, very sympathetic to the comments regarding the community centers. These are services that impact the most citizens, and we should prioritize creative ways to maintain these services. At the same time, the city, I think, needs to plan for the very likely outcome that the incremental revenues to cover the shortfalls ahead of us, it's not going to happen. There's too much uncertainty in the passage of the fire service fee and too little transparency in how it might be implemented and administered to assume that this revenue will be available for the city. Costs are rising faster than the rate of revenues, so we either need to cut budget or raise revenue. I mean, it's a pretty straight formula. So this is a structural issue, and short-term, one-time solutions will only make the problem worse. To do it right requires a long-term strategy, and that foundation, I think, is strong economic growth and safe communities. I think the amended budget in lieu of the service fee or some other revenue generator is the most responsible path. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Leach.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who came to testify. To the person, I don't think they're here anymore, that asked or said if this is just a box that we're checking. And I just want to say, no, this is not just a box. We are here, we're listening. And more than that, we are a part of this community. We all have been for most of our lives. I'm a single mom. I have little kids who use a lot of these services. My primary job is actually in the mental health field. I'm embedded deeply in all of this work, and it's a system as a whole. And every time that we tweak a piece of the system, we can see the ripple effect. And so I'm really interested in how we continue looking at this as a whole, and not just, you framed it, and thank you so much for your presentation. I've been very excited about it. In traditional response and then alternative response. And to me, it's not that at all. It is a spectrum of appropriate response, right? And where is that spectrum? And you're talking about the gaps, and where can we look at these gaps, and where can we plug it in? I really hope that we can keep some designated funding to fill those gaps. And that's what I'm going to be continuing to advocate for throughout this budget process. We might not know exactly what that is, and that's part of this process, right? Is that analysis, really figuring that out, and then plugging in the right pieces. So thank you for that. And I had questions, you answered them along the way. And I did have one question about our health care, which is an interesting piece, which our health insurance comes out of personnel, but our health claims comes out of materials and services, which I just learned through this. Thank you for providing that information. And we're self-insured, so people pay part into the premium, and then we take out of that. And then there was some cost savings around that. Can you just describe a little bit more about those budget pieces? And then I have one other question about utilities.
Yes, I think you're referring to the health rate savings that we're proposing as part of this budget. So when we set our health rate costs, we work with our actuary, and the rates are set, in a biennial budget, almost 2 years, 18 months in advance. And so our actual claims experience has been much better than projected, actually below the national average. So because our experience has been better than we originally projected, we're able to realize those savings.
And so is the projection in the budget of that 80 million in claims based on kind of the better claims process in the past, or is that more staying steady and we could possibly see same kind of savings?
So in the proposed budget, the claims, we have recognized claims, better claims experience. We will continue each cycle to see what our experience is, see what's happening nationally, see what our actuary says, and as we go through each cycle, we'll adjust accordingly. So our rates may be higher in the future based on claims experience and what's happening in that area, but we have incorporated that into this next biennial claims experience.
Perfect, thank you. Our utilities are like 26 million. I see where we're in rents, we're kind of charging to different departments. Do we do that with the utilities? It doesn't say that we do that.
So those are usually captured in facilities rates. So for each facility across the city, that's part of the facility rate calculation is utilities. Is that answering your question?
How much of that is paid with the general fund versus can we put that into more of the other places?
No, that's really based on, the experience for each, how each facility is funded. So what's in the general fund, we can't really transfer those to other funds for those facilities that are general fund funded.
Okay. I was just wondering about interdepartmental transfer there of some of that cost. I am running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I want to thank the folks that came out and spoke tonight and gave testimony to their issues and concerns around these budget challenges that we have. I want to take us back to slide 6, big bullet 4, which is immediate shelter and the gap there. And this question is for you, Chief Skinner. I remember shortly after we hired you as chief, we had a conversation about standing up a 75-bed emergency shelter, public shelter. Now, it was going to be on our side of town, which I was not happy with, and I had that conversation and tour with Commissioner Farr. And I also want to point out that the distribution of human services across this city is wholly inadequate, and that distribution needs to be balanced across the city. But what happened to the recommendations of the TAC report about the establishment of a public emergency shelter? And I note that the Eugene Mission does a good job, but that's a private entity. And this question may be more for the county than what you can respond to, but from your perspective, we had those conversations about standing up a public shelter and having that as a critical piece of our response to homelessness.
I'm gonna jump in for the chief because what that ended up turning into was the navigation center. So we did open that up. So we have the 75-bed navigation center that was opened up on River Ave, and we were looking at a site.
I remember that
A
part.
site in
They
99.
bought
a
River
site-
Avenue.
Or River
facility.
Drive, it's not.
River, it's on River Avenue.
Yeah. Right, so it's there, it's operating, the county operates that. Initially, I can't remember what we ended up investing. We had some one-time dollars to invest in it, and they were able to obtain other funding to keep it going operationally, so it's running.
Can I add just a point of clarification on the slide? This should say transport to immediate shelter.
Okay.
That, the gap isn't that we don't have shelter beds, I mean, we don't have enough, but this service, one of the things that they did was help people get either immediate sheltering assistance or transport to one of those shelters when they're challenged. So that's the gap that we don't know the volume of.
Okay, that gives me some clarity that I wasn't seeing in the slide. So I am, one of the things I'm going to say as president of this council is, and I want people to hear me very clearly, we don't need to be pointing fingers at each other. We're all in this together. And so we need to pull together. There is nobody to blame here. What we have is a situation where we are collectively all in the same lifeboat. Our job is to find a way to get to safe ground. So let's pull together. Let's not point fingers at each other. There's nobody in here does not want to solve this issue. And my time has expired.
Thank you. I want also to thank everyone that came out for public comment today. Lots of testimony that really pulled at my heartstrings. I agree with everything I heard about the value to our community of every one of these services that we're considering cutting. I'll highlight, I think it was Tori who talked about her older daughter getting services at the preschool services at the Sheldon Community Center. And my son is currently at the Peterson Barn preschool, and she said it was life-changing. I agree. It's an amazing program that the city offers, and the idea that kids might not be able to have that in the future, that her younger daughter might not be able to, that really hit me, along with so many of these other things. I want to highlight something Councilor Kaczynski said about how this is a unique cycle where a lot of there's these parallel conversations happening outside of this room. As painful as each and every one of these cuts are, the fact that there are so many of them and there are so many services that are all so valuable to our community makes it extremely difficult to see, for me, a way that we can reasonably pick and choose among them, and picking like one or another thing to save doesn't feel right within the charge of this committee, not to me. Others, it's up to you, but it's in terms of if we have to send a budget to council with $11.5 million in cuts, I don't know how to pick one thing to save and then let everything else go when there's so many things so important to us. I think those parallel conversations are where potential solutions actually lie. The only cut in here that I feel a little bit differently about is the Green Hill service contract, because I think there's a really direct public safety piece around that, and it's a fundamental obligation that we have on July 1st. If we come into custody of an animal, we still have an animal we have to do something with, whether we have the contract or not. And I've only looked into this a little bit. It's not my full area of expertise, but from what I've seen so far, it doesn't look like there's going to be a cheaper way to do it, to do something better or different. So I'm having trouble seeing that one cut as an actual cost savings. The others, as painful as they may be to lose the service, at least they do save money. So I'm glad that we have a couple of people who want to work on that with their budget buddies. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a motion to that regard. And as for the rest of it, it's just a really, really painful cycle for me. So with that, I'm going to toss it online to Zach Mulholland.
Thank you, Ty, and thanks very much to staff for your presentations tonight, everyone that spoke tonight. With regards to process, just to confirm, we as a budget committee are being asked to cut $11.5 million from the budget and pass that and send that to council. What is the process to add things back? Will that, if council passes an alternative revenue measure, would it be council solely that would make that decision on what to add back? And that would happen either the night of or after that, or would the budget committee potentially be brought back in at some point? Or should we be making those recommendations on what to prioritize as part of this process?
So again, it's really hard to give you a very clear, certain answer because everything is a little bit uncertain at the moment. However, one thing that is clear is that it's always going to be council's final decision what is added back. They will be the final deciders on the budget. So, it depends on if there is a different alternative revenue and it's tied to something specific, or whether it's an alternative revenue, city manager bring us a recommendation. If that happens as part of this process, you would be making a recommendation to the council, who would be making the decision. And if it happens after that, I think potentially a supplemental budget conversation, but not necessarily if it's very specific. So I know that's not.
Thank you. Well, it might behoove us to come up with a prioritization list that we could recommend to council on things to add back with a supplemental revenue option. Thank you to council for all the work you did to pass the original revenue option, which could have gotten us out ahead of a lot of these cuts. And I am hopeful that we can find a way to get out of the situation that we're in. With regards to Cahoots, how much has been, can you remind me, what has been the level of that contract in the past, the annual contract?
It's just under $1 million, I think 967,000 in total.
Thank you. When the community safety payroll tax was implemented, part of its preamble said that 10% of CSI funds were going to be spent on prevention and homeless services. What is the proposal for funding for homeless prevention and services total and from the CSI in the proposed budget?
We could provide that answer in the packet for you.
Thank you. I'll follow up with that. I think the last thing is just, I don't think these got mentioned by folks, but some of the proposed cuts that I wanted to, maybe get some additional thought around. Can you speak to the energy management program that's proposed to being cut? I read online that they brought in over $2 million in grants as part of that position that have funded energy efficiency work that would probably has saved us millions more. Is this going to be a cost benefit for us to lose that position?
So this is Mia Carriaga, Central Services Director, and that position lives within the Facilities Division. We have, over time, used a person who runs a fairly analog program to accomplish that work, and she has more recently discovered that there are probably ways to modernize. So we will continue to do that work. It will just look different.
And who will be doing that work if we no longer have this position on staff?
We're working through that right now, but I'm imagining that we'll leverage technology in a different way.
Okay. And then can you speak to the loss of the sustainability program analyst? I believe this was supposed to be the climate person. How long has the city wanted to hire someone to help work on its CAP 2.0 and actually move forward on the work that the council approved as part of the CAP 2.0?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rich Hoy, Public Works Director, and that position is one of three in the sustainability program. It's currently vacant. And not filling it will definitely slow down our ability to advance the work under the climate recovery ordinance. Excuse me. This is my first time in front of you all, so excuse me. That definitely has an impact on our ability to advance our climate work. The specific impact will be our slowing down our work, particularly around building decarbonization and work with commercial buildings will be the primary area for the impact.
Had you already interviewed that person, or were about to make an offer, and until this revenue source was lost in the fire fee, and that's why this position is no longer being filled?
That's correct. We did launch a recruitment process for the position. We got pretty far along in the process. We did not make an offer to any individuals, and then we held the position pending this budget process.
Thanks. I think this is another position where, this person, it sounded like, was going to be helping low-income households get access to grants and rebates for energy efficient appliances, which are going to lower household energy costs, help save the money, help with asthma and other things that people are negatively impacted by. And if we don't actually deal with climate change and be a model for others for how a city can reduce emissions, it's going to cost us a lot more in the long run. And I hope that we can figure out how to add these important positions back. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Clearly, we don't have time for any second round tonight. If anyone has further questions that come up, always email Christina. If anyone has motions they want to work on, work with your budget buddies, find people to collaborate with. We are meeting again next week with, once again, public comment in person, and then on May 28th, we'll have the hybrid public hearing. I want to thank Mayor Knudsen, who joined us online as an honored guest. We unfortunately hit a wall. This would be where I'm tossing to her, but we have hit the end of our agenda, and I am forced to adjourn at 9:01 p.m.